Hey everybody, today on Rahdo Runs Through, I am rounding up the month of February, which means, like always, I'm going to be telling you about all the games my wife Jen and I played over the preceding weeks in countdown format, starting with my least favorite game of the month and ending with my most favorite, a new game of the month. And man, February 2025's game of the month, oh folks, I guarantee you have not heard of this. Talk about hidden gem, sleeper hits. This game is phenomenal. I can't wait to tell you about it. But before I get to that, you may notice, if you're a longtime viewer of the monthly roundup, things are a little different. Gone are all my walls of games in my Calyx shelves. Why? Well, if you missed last month's roundup, you missed the announcement, folks. My wife and I were moving to Ireland. We get on the plane on March 17th, just a few weeks from now, and we have so much left to do. There is so much wrapping up our lives in America and starting a completely new, exciting chapter of our lives on the Emerald Isle, working on getting our EU citizenship and all of that. We are very, very excited, but our lives are complete and total chaos, which is why I'm coming to you today live from effectively an afterlife waiting room is what I like to think of it, because man, it's just so white. Although you can see some scuff marks from where the shelves were on the wall. Although, don't be fooled. This looks all nice and calm and peaceful. I am surrounded by mess. In fact, I set up a camera ahead of time. This one, I've taken loose my camera. Where is it if I click this? Hello. Hey, there's a bunch of games that go to Ireland. There's a whole big bunch of games that go to Ireland. There's a bunch of prototypes that I have to break down and recycle. Hey, there I am filming. There's me reminding myself not to say all the time, and yet I still do it. But anyway, let's see. And that was only half the games. Although, actually, that's about half of my collection. And, in addition to everything else we're doing with the moving, this is as good a segue as any. It used to be the monthly Rahdo Roundup was sponsored by various and sundry publishers, but I've really stopped chasing after sponsors, and I'm these days relying on sponsoring myself, basically. The Rahdo Runs Through show is brought to you by viewers like you who back the show on Patreon or here on YouTube as members. And I'm just going to do a little a blurb for this really quick. Did you know every month that there are a bunch of exclusive videos that are only available to backers of the show? Here's what went up in February. And I think I'm going to do this really quick every month. One, to let backers of the show know in case they missed any of these exclusives, and two, to let folks know what they're missing and why they might want to back the show. What do we got? Well, every backer, no matter the level, got a full run-through of me and Jen playing Daybreak, which is just outside of my top 10 games of all time now. Jen, I had a fun time playing this, trying to save the world. Then at the next level, there was my ramble. This month, my ramble, my monthly video log, was me going on for almost 3 hours about the 300 games and expansions that I removed from my collection. Over 300 games and expansions have now been shipped off to the Dice Tower West Convention Library in Las Vegas. And this ramble is me going in painstaking detail about every single one of those games and why they didn't make the cut. Because if you're moving overseas, you want to keep costs down. It's very expensive. So I decided I'm going to get rid of half my collection, and I did. And I chronicle that journey in this month's ramble, which is available right now as an exclusive. Even if you don't want to sign up, you can just buy any of these individually if you follow the links down in the show notes. Then I did a monthly Q&A. That was a fun one because in all the hubbub that's going on, I forgot to ask my viewers, hey, what questions do you have? And so I didn't have any this month. So actually, I went through a bunch of questions that had been asked of Paul Grogan of Gaming Rules. So it was like a completely different set of questions than I normally do, that I used to in my podcast, and now I do as an exclusive for backers. Then at the higher levels, there was me doing a full solo run-through of Invincible, the hero building game, Jen and me doing a full run-through of Mistborn, the deck builder, and Jen's Jen Jog, which is her every month giving her opinions of all the games we've played, including a couple games I'm not going to talk about today because they were so bad I don't want to talk about them publicly, but we talked about them in the Jen Jog. So folks, that's just like I said, just a little bit of sponsorship, me sponsoring myself. There are a lot of great things, plus the ability to vote on what games I cover, early access to videos, days, weeks, sometimes even months before the rest of the world gets to see them, and while they're early access, they're ad-free, so there are a bunch of reasons you might want to consider backing the show, either here on YouTube as a member or over at patreon.com/Rahdo. Advertisement over. Let's get to it, folks. I'm going to be counting down 22 games today, and you have been patient long enough. I've kept you waiting, so let's get going. Starting with a number 22 of the month, it is Star Trek's. Is this playing? There it is. Yes, it is playing. Star Trek's Lower Deck Buffer Time, the card game. And I have not done a run through for it, but the YouTube channel Monkeys with Fire has, so I'm using them. Thank you, Monkeys with Fire. There's a link for their video down in the show notes if you want to see their live stream of playing this game. And, oh man, folks, talk about my biggest disappointment so far of 2025. I am the hugest Star Trek fan in all of board game media, or one of the hugest. And Star Trek Lower Decks is my favorite of all the various and sundry Star Trek franchises we have had over the decades. And so I was very, very excited to find it was getting its own dedicated game. And I was a little worried because this is a very, very fast, lightweight, simple, cooperative push your luck game. I thought, my love of the series is going to push me through. It didn't. Now, there are interesting things about this. First of all, it's pretty rare to find cooperative push-your-luck games or pure push-your-luck games. Like, there was the Grizzled and a few others here and there. In fact, there's one more on the list I'll be talking about today, but it's pretty rare to find. So I was actually kind of excited. I kind of like the idea of pushing my luck more as a co-op than a competitive game. And I love the subject matter here, that we are just the ensigns of Star Trek Lower Deck, having to do all the crappy jobs. Like, what card did you just draw? Oh, Monkeys with Fire, you've got a lot of glare, I can't read it. Oh, they got a red alert they've got to deal with. And so every round, it just goes around the table, each player deciding on their turn whether they are going to draw a card and do work on whatever the current job is, which I assume Monkey with Fire will actually start doing eventually. There we go. So he starts doing some work. So you push your luck, because every time you draw a new card, to see how much work you do, anywhere from 1 to 5 of the 18 that needs to resolve that red alert, you run the risk of drawing the ire of the officers. And I think if you get 4 officer tokens, then you bust and you fail and you lose the job. So anyway, he is starting to push his luck, getting closer and closer to his target of 18. But on your turn, instead of just drawing and pushing your luck, you can alternatively play one of the cards you've got. And you've got cards that basically are little side projects that make it even harder to hit your target, but will score more points if you do, or you've got special powers you can use. And all of these jobs and side projects and powers are based on the show with quotes and original art. They're really nice. And he just decided, you know what, I'm going to take on an extra job because he's doing so well. He hasn't gotten the ire of any officers yet. In fact, he's taking on 2 jobs. He thinks he's going to be able to pull off this really big thing. So he's really going to push even harder. Now, instead of an 18, he needs 18 plus 5 plus 3 to hit his target. But he's doing really well. But if you get too many officers, you will bust, you will fail, and you lose all your progress. And to win, you have to score a certain number of points over, I think, 5 shifts, 5 main projects you're going to do. And it's very, very simple. It couldn't get much simpler in terms of push your luck. So why didn't I like it? Because there's a lot to like here. The push your luck mechanisms work just fine, and it is very, very nice to be working cooperative with people rather than hoping they fail and that I succeed, like most push your luck games out there, like Diamant or whatever. Man, he's getting incredibly lucky. He hasn't seen a single officer. No wonder he decided to push his luck and take on that extra job. That's crazy. He's probably going to pull that off and score some points. But anyway, the interesting thing about the game is you have these extra special powers that lets you manipulate the cards you're drawing, or mess with turn order, or all kinds of really cool powers. And the problem is, if you play this only as a 2-player, and inexplicably for some reason there are no solo rules. The designer has put some solo rules, I think, on the publisher's website. I don't even think they're on Board Game Geek yet, but they are on the publisher's website, so you can play this solo. But regardless, the fewer players you have, the fewer of those cool special powers are in the game. Like, I can't quite. Now, I cannot reach them. They've got the spy on Delta Shift as their side project. They've just gotten their first, officer that they have to worry about. But anyway, these special powers are what make the game interesting. If you didn't have those cards, you don't really have very many choices to make. You just keep pushing your luck, hoping you don't bust. But it's when to play those cards, those special power cards, at the right time that's so important. Which is why only playing as a 2-player game, at the beginning of the game, there are only 4 of those cards in play. If you're playing a 4-player game of this, there are 8 of those powers in the game, but they can only be played in turn order. So then decisions start getting really interesting. And I think the developers made a huge mistake not balancing things for lower player counts to bring more of these cards in so you have more interesting decisions to make. I've only played as a 2-player game. I would expect at higher player count, the decisions get more interesting. Like, your card will fix our problem, but it's 2 turns away from you. Do I draw another card now? We could bust. Well, if I don't do that, and I don't want you to play one of my powers, then I've got to do another side project. But your power will fix it for us so we can afford that other side project, and then players start working together, and then it gets interesting. Almost none of that is there in a 2-player game. And that is heartbreaking because it did not have to be this way. And look, he actually finished it. He scored big on this one. Let's go. That is not the norm. You can see now he's got another side project, but one officer is already there. It's a clean, simple, fast-playing game, and for super fans of the show like me, who don't mind, boom, they just busted. Captain Freeman showed up, that's 4, so they busted, they lost all that progress. Before that happened, they should have used one of their special powers. And deciding when to use those powers is what makes this game great, and in a 2-player game, there are very few of them. And so the game becomes very rote, and for me, incredibly disappointing, which is why do I say 23? It should be number 22 of the month. My biggest disappointment, although it could have been so much better. And again, I suspect if you're a Star Trek Lower Decks super fan like me, and you can play with 4 or more players, and you're looking for like a fun, raucous time, I think this would rate quite a bit higher. But for me, it comes in at number 22 of the month. Like I said, my biggest heartbreak of the month. Ouch. Star Trek Lower Decks. Buffer time. Alrighty, now let's move on to number 21 of the month, Portmanteau. And here is Steph, Hodge, and Michael doing a great run-through of it. There'll be a link for that down in the show notes because Jen and I did not enjoy this game at all. That's why it comes in at number 21 of the month. Although, honestly, Portmanteau, I don't think it's you, it's us. This is definitely a game that just did not click with me and Jen. But what is it? Well, it's a very simple kind of Codenames-esque party game of sorts. Why is Michael showing he's just showing a bunch of different cards. But anyway, the way it works is at any given time, there is one clue giver who has to create a portmanteau. And a portmanteau is, combining 2 words to create a new word. Like, execution is a portmanteau of electric and, electrocution is a portmanteau of electric and execution. Electrocution is a portmanteau. And so, you have a grid of cards showing random symbols like this, and when you are the clue giver, you draw a couple cards that tell you, right, you have to combine, say, that card in the bottom left with the one in the middle. And you have to take letters from the bottom left and then combine them with letters from the middle. What would you do if I'm looking at that and I say, that's like a binocular view? So maybe it's biparator because it's a binocular operator. So service, is that like a customer service person? Like Bivis or by Nokvis or something like that. Anyway, I've got to combine the beginning of one word with another word. We're saying these pictures, and then all I can tell you is what the word is and how many letters. And we have to come up with with portmanteaus of different combinations, ranging from, I think it's 3 or 4 letters long up to 8 letters long to win. And it's hard. It is crazy hard to do this. Go check out Michael and you can see they just lost again. And I don't know. I'm sure there's an audience for this, but it's not me and Jen. I do think this is a game that's going to be better with more players. Like when you play Codenames with more people, and there's the one clue giver, a lot of people can get more ideas of what the clue giver was thinking. With only 2 players, it is a more challenging thing to do. And then you can see they lost, so now they flip all the cards, and now you're going to get 2 random things. And what if it's the middle left and the bottom right? That's what is it? It's a compass, and is that a postcard? So that's an easy. We might say that's a com card, or a compard, compard, C-O-M-P-A-R-D. That would be a 7-letter word, compard. That would be a pretty easy one. I would hope you would see, oh, it's a compass, right? And so they see C-O-M-P. He said comp, so then there's 3 letters of the other. It's ard. What are the other things? Oh, maybe it's that postcard over there, if he thinks that's a postcard. The trick is players will interpret these symbols as different words. So it is a challenging game. And for me and Jen, it was too much. We could make no progress on it at all, particularly because the game can be pretty harsh. Codenames does a lot of the same stuff, but gives you a lot of flexibility about how to combine different combinations of words with clues. Here, you are forced to combine the beginning of one item with the end of another item. You can't even say, oh, I want the beginning I want to be able to switch the beginning of that one and the end of that one instead of vice versa. But it really hampers you, and it becomes an incredible challenge. Now, like I said, sometimes you'll get ones that are really easy. Sometimes you'll get ones that I can't even figure this out all. I don't know. We'll take a shot, and it can be really satisfying when your teammates figure it out. But again, I suggest going and watching Steph and Michael, and you'll get a sense for this, and they'll be giving clues, and you could play along with them and see if you can figure out their clues faster than they can, and you'll know from watching this if it's for you. Don't get me wrong. My wife and I, we love So Clover. We love Codenames. And so we should have loved this one too. And I wanted to. I really think it's a clever idea, but it's just so much more constricting. And it just becomes, it's just so much more challenging, or it can be. Sometimes it's crazy easy. Sometimes it's like, I have no idea how to do this. Let's hope for the best. And that's what I think made it not work so well for me and Jen. And that's why it comes in at number 21. But again, I cannot stress enough. Steph and Michael do an amazing job. If you subscribe to my channel, you should totally subscribe to theirs. And just after a couple of rounds, you'll know whether Portmanteau is for you. Because who cares what I think? Decide for yourself. That's what run-throughs are for. And it's really easy to get a sense for number 21, Portmanteau. All right. Now, let's move on to number 20 of the month, Diatoms. Another game I have not filmed, but Danny of channel Danny Chaw did. She did a great solo run-through of this very, very cool and colorful abstract game of tile laying and resource collection. Here's what we're doing. We are Victorian era scientists rearranging molecular structures to create works of art. This is apparently something Victorian era scientists, as soon as they developed the microscope, what they decide to do? Hey, let's mess with microscopic organisms and make cool little dioramas that were called diatoms. And that's what they did, and that's what we're doing in this game. On your turn, you've got a few different tiles to choose from, 2 of your own plus 2 on the public display. You've got to lay one of them into the petri dish that is like a bigger growing area of tiles, then use your little microscope like Danny just did to collect different shapes of different colors. And then you take those shapes of colors and you put them in your own little diorama display, trying to do them as best you can to score points. And you score points by having mirrored images and colors opposite each other, by having variety in the different rings, and also every time you play, you can have 1 or 2 special objectives that will change up from game to game. That's another way you can score points. And it works very well. And for people who love this kind of abstract, it's got a cool theme, and it makes sense with the theme, but still, at its heart, it is an abstract game trying to figure out which tile I'm going to grab. Like she just grabbed a tile that had a blank that gave her nothing, but then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 5-sided purple tile, which maybe was exactly what she needed, the star tile to put somewhere out there to score points for based on whatever the objective is. That's the crux of the game. It is a very sharp game. It is a very fast game. And if you like abstract games like this is one to look for. This, I would say, is much more challenging and crunchy than other games of the type. Like, say, what do you call it? Azul. I mean, I think it's hard not to draw comparisons to Azul because they kind of look similar with the colorful tiles and all of that. But this game, I'll tell you right now, folks, I'll warn you, this is super crunchy. Super duper crunchy. And it really demands a lot of you, picking between all the tiles that are available to you, all the places they could go, what colors are you going to draft, how are you going to place them out there, what things are you going to focus on to try to score well. It's a quick game, it plays pretty fast, but it is incredibly challenging. And for me, I'm not a fan of what you call them, abstracts. So it was never really going to work for me much. But I wanted to check it out because my wife loves abstracts. She really bumped up against this as well because of the insane crunch factor. I'm thinking, prior to this, probably the crunchiest, most complex abstract I played was Vivid Memories. This takes it to the next level. This is probably the crunchiest abstract I've ever played, and we played a bunch of them. It was too much for me and Jen, but if you love colorful, pretty abstracts, they have a lot of replayability with, variations of objectives that play every time, plus a very, very cool solo mode with different chapters you can play through. If you're just looking for some solo play, like Danny's doing here, you definitely want to check it out. In the meantime, go check out her run through. There's a link for it down in the show notes so you can get a sense for whether Diatoms works for you. It did not work for me and Jen for different reasons, and honestly, I didn't have a problem with the crunch. Jen, the crunch, the spatial puzzly was too much. For me, the abstract was too much, and so Diatoms comes in at number 20. Okay, then let's go on to number 19 of the month is Nyakuza. I believe that it looks like Nyakuza, but I think it's like Yakuza, but with an N. Nyakuza. Something like that. Basically, in this game, we are anthropomorphized cat mafia. In, I'm not sure if it's feudal era Japan or era of industrialization Japan, but this is basically a remake of an earlier game that came out, I think, in 2014. Yeah, 2014, called Orongo from Design Superstar Reiner Knizia. And it was originally published by Ravensburger, but now, Cool Mini or Not has given it's the exact same gameplay. They've just come up with new setting and art. And, this is... for a lot of people, this is one of Reiner Knizia's greatest designs of all time. Obviously, wasn't for me and Jen because it came in at number 19, but let me tell you why. Let's see here. This is a picture of it set up. Like I said, we are in a Japanese fishing village. We are trying to, take control of the place. Let's see. By bidding. We each have, hidden behind our shields, we start with a whole bunch of money, these golden coins. And every round, we are going to bring out, let me go ahead and zoom in, we are going to bring out some new tiles, like this octopus at space 14, and this crab at space 26. And oh, look, an octopus at number 1. Let's say in this round, those are the 3 tiles that came out. You can see there are some other tiles that have come out on previous rounds. I think this is at the end of a game, so there are very few things that haven't been taken. Let's see, are there any other pictures that maybe don't show the end of a game? That aren't pictures of the earlier version of the game? Yeah, because there's lots of pictures of the 2020. All right. Okay, here's one. This will be, yeah. This is a bit more mid-game, except I can't zoom in as much. Oh, it'll have to do. Okay, so anyway, so again, let's say the crab and that octopus and this octopus over here came out. And there are still some other ones left over from other rounds. Now, what we're going to do is we all have money behind our screen, so nobody knows exactly what anybody's got, but we're going to take turns. We're actually going to simultaneously select how much money we want to bid and then reveal. And whoever bids highest gets first dibs on claiming these tiles. We all have these cool little translucent boat tiles, and so you can see that the red player has claimed some spaces over there. The green player and the red player, they're both claiming spaces over here. And what you're trying to do, like this blue player over here got a big group of blue tiles that they've been able to grab by bidding high at the right time when these tiles came out. And they made a big enough group that let them set up a stall on the shore. And that's what we're racing to do. We're racing to be the first to set up all our stalls. Purple has done 1, 2, 3 stalls. Blue's got a stall. Red's working on it, but they haven't quite gotten a stall out there yet. They've got the space for it, but they need some more. And it's a race to get our stalls built. And it's all driven by this simultaneous select and reveal auction. The trick is, hey, if you bid the most, you get to place, I think, 3 of your boats. And you're trying to get the groups together and claim the land and all of that. But you also have to claim, you have to basically make paths from one type, like from the octopus to the squid, or from the tuna to the other tuna. I mean, you can see them all on your little player aid, what the different, I mean, it's not the size of the group, it's if the group contains, these different combinations of things, plus, can get to the round. So other players might cut you off before you could get there. There's all those kinds of concerns you have to worry about. So that's why you want to bid high and grab those things while the grabbing is good. But if you don't bid high enough, you still get to go. You just don't get first dibs and you don't get to place as many boats. The trick is, whoever bid the most, they lose their money and it starts piling up on this pier over here. And everybody who came in second or third or fourth, they hold on to their money. They don't get to do as much. They don't get first dibs, but they've got more money for future rounds. However, as more and more money builds up on this, if anybody bids 0, they don't get to do anything that round, but they pick up all the accruing cash so that they become the dominant power going into the next few rounds. So knowing when to make the right move, when to bid high, when to bid low is everything in this game of territory acquisition, and I guess kind of like set collection in your territory acquisition. So this was already a very beloved game when it came out from 2014, and now it looks great. It's got a very fun, wacky, gangster feline, Nyakuza or look to it. And why does it come in so low for me and Jen? Because I don't think it's a very good game at 2 players, as is often the case. I mean, heck, back in the day, Reiner Knizia often wouldn't even make rules for 2 players. Like Raw originally famously didn't have 2-player rules. And honestly, I would say this game, as it stands, is not a particularly engaging 2-player experience. It's a little bit of a bummer. Because, I like the idea of simultaneous bidding, but with only another player, we tend not to block each other. Hey, if you got that thing, I'm going to get this thing over there because the board is still huge. There's so many opportunities and the race is still there. I'm not saying it doesn't function. It's a satisfying 2-player experience, but it is obvious with every single turn that there should be more players from turn to turn, grabbing more territory, cutting each other off by accident or on purpose, knowing when to bid high, knowing when, there's nothing out there I really like, but I'd still like to grab something, when to bid low or to bid nothing. But what if other players bid nothing and then you've got to split the rewards? This game is going to sing at 3 or 4, or I don't remember if it goes up to 5 or not. But, it does not have 2-player solo rules, and I would think, and Board Game Geek agrees, best at 3, or I would say 4. It works as a 2-player game. I mean, I wouldn't turn down a game, but I would not seek it out. But I would definitely enjoy playing it at higher player counts, which I think is the way it should be played. And that's why Nyakuza, Nyakuza, for those listening instead of watching, comes in at number 19 of the month. Okay, then we go on to number 18 of the month, Intarsia, which I have not done a run-through for, but Steph Hodge of All the Games has. She and Michael did a great run-through. There's a link for it down in the show notes. If you want to go check it out, like always, I highly suggest you. And I suggest Steph is my go-to for covering. If I haven't covered it, chances are Steph has. So Steph and Michael, and they do a great job teaching how to play the game and then playing it and showing you what makes it great. So what makes this game great? Well, the interesting thing is, this is effectively almost an heir apparent a spiritual sequel to Azul, because it's from the same designer-publisher combo. Michael Kiesling working with Pegasus, which made, probably the biggest, most successful abstract board game of the last decade. Azul are working together again and trying to capture lightning in a bottle again. And sadly, I don't think this time they did. And that's not to say that Intarsia isn't a good game. It is very abstract. It's very simple rules, as it should be. What we're trying to do is, at the beginning of every round, I forget if it's like 4 or 5 rounds, something like that, we get an influx of colorful cards. And then we take turns spending those cards as resources to buy these cool wooden pieces, like kind of parquet tiles for this particular type of tile that happens. I forget. I think it's set in it's set in Spain or Portugal, or I don't remember where it was set. It's all described in the rule book, of course. But we're trying to get outer pieces, and then middle pieces, and then inner pieces, which are the tables. And we're trying to get these X's that let us expand out or build up more of what we've already done. And there's a big table, or a big board full of different objectives. We're racing to be the first to complete these different objectives to score points, but more importantly to set collect. Because, if you look at this table, like there's this one, hey, have 2 medium-size orange, not quite complete, but medium complete. If you're the first one to do this, you'll get this. And that has the hammer icon on it. If you've gotten that hammer icon, like Stephanie just did, then you're going to want to grab the one above or below it, because you get this multiplication effect. But the problem is, completing the objectives above and below it are completely at odds. You have to focus on completely different things to try to get the multiplication combinations you get. I mean, the core gameplay is simple. You got a bunch of cards, you see what pieces you're trying to grab, because you're trying to complete these objectives, but there's never a case where, because I did this, I can do this other thing, but that means I'm working on a completely different column. And so the game really forces you to diversify when you don't want to. Because once you made an investment in a particular portion of your floor, you want to keep leveraging that. But if you keep leveraging that, you're not going to be able to get combos, because the game heavily incentivizes you to diversify and do a little bit of everything. And honestly, I think that was the problem. My wife, Djinn, who again is a huge abstract fan, she found that frustrating. She really did want to specialize in this game. You can do it, but you'll suffer for it. You really have to diversify, and she prefers specialization, getting really good at something and building on what she's done instead of constantly having to pivot. Okay, I've done this, now I've got to completely forget about that and start working on this other thing. Although smart play is, hey, while I'm doing this, I'm in the low-key in the background building up for this other thing I'm going to do over there, because I know how they'll combine eventually. Anyway, the rules are super simple. I've made it sound more complicated than it is. Every beginning round, you get a bunch of cards, and then you just spend turns playing those cards to get tiles. You stack them together, you complete objectives and score points. If you like a very pretty, because it is a lovely looking game, and it's very satisfying to fill all these spaces up, and you like a game that forces you to think tactically instead of strategically and constantly pivot from one direction to another, especially when somebody else grabs the objective you spent half the game trying to get, and like, that was going to be my third hammer. Oh, it's gone now. And so you really have to pivot a lot in this game. Then you might dig Intarsia. My wife, she does not like doing that, so it wasn't for her. And me, I'm just not a fan of abstract, so it wasn't for me. So that's why it comes in at number 18. But it's very good at what it does. What it does just isn't for me and Jen. All right, then let's go on to number 17 of the month, Cube Monster. And now this is a game that Shay originally covered on the channel back when it was crowdfunding. And the publisher sent me out a copy of the final version. Not because I was that much into the gameplay. I mean, the gameplay looked good from Shay's run through. I thought, this is a neat little cross between a race game, literally racing our little miniature characters up to the top of Cube Mountain to win, but with engine building. Because every round we are drafting to grab cubes that we put on our own board in different geometric configurations to represent different powers they'll give us, like cube generating engines or cube modifying engines, or all kinds of things, depending on how we draft cubes. And build all these little stacks of cubes. And the cubes that don't get drafted, they end up accumulating on this big gigantic claw that represents the cube monster. And once, the cubes that don't get drafted, there's only so many places they can go onto the claw. Eventually, you're going to have a complete row or column of cubes in the claw, and that means the cube monster is going to attack everybody. And we find out that, maybe some of our engines will be destroyed, or, first of all, if you can pay the monster, if you can afford to pay them off by giving up the cubes you've invested in, you don't suffer. But otherwise, you will suffer by losing a lot of points. So that's the pushback. But at any given time on the board, there are a bunch of little mini objectives that if we can build, not only do we want to build different combinations of the cubes we're drafting to get engine building options and all that, we want to complete all these objectives because those will give us wild cubes that we need to build more stuff. And also, when we're not building all our cubes for this, we're also spending our cubes to climb up the mountain. So the cubes are the building blocks of our engines, but they're also the fuel of our race car. And so that's a really interesting tension, and knowing that the cubes we don't take will ultimately hurt us, but we can prepare for that because we can see, how soon it's coming, but we don't know exactly how we're going to get hit, means there's a lot to think about. And I like the idea of all of this. Now, at the end of the day, unfortunately, the game does come with some nasty take that cards you can do, some powers, and I didn't care for those, but I was somewhat heartened by the fact that the game, they're marked, the take that cards are marked special, so you can leave them out. The rules say, hey, if you don't like that, leave them out. But still, the cubes we choose to draft or not draft are an indirect way of players attacking each other, and so that was still a shame. If there was something we could do, if the cube monster, the titular cube monster itself, wasn't here, and it was just all about us trying to build as best we can and race as fast as we can, I think this would have ranked much higher for me in Gen. But we did find it just kind of frustrating to constantly be dealing with, all the setbacks. It's like there's this third, element that's just, beating you down. And my wife really hated that. Me, I was kind of on the fence about it, but still, the fact that, the beatdowns we can, get hit by are in part driven by choices we make. And I want to put this cube on the monster claw in this place at this time because I know it'll hurt you more than me because I can see you're less prepared for it than I am. And then we roll a die to see how hard it hits, and you got smashed to the ground and I've got off scot-free. And, that's just not a feeling I enjoy. But for players who like, it's an interesting combination. You haven't seen it often. I'm reminded of Steampunk Rally, another great engine building race game, or Race for El Dorado, which is a deck building and therefore an engine building game, or Cubitos. I guess there are other ones out there, but so if you're looking for engine building and race, but with a fair amount of direct negative interactivity, Cube Monster might work for you. It didn't work for me in Gen, but that's because we're Care Bear players. But if you're looking for some Rock'em Sock'em Take That, you might want to check out number 17 of the month, Cube Monster. Alrighty. Then we move on to number 16 of the month, Chu Han. And once again, the great Steph Hodge, steps in to do a run through. There's a link for it down in the show notes. What is this? This is based on real Chinese Warring Dynasty history. It's from a designer, Tom Lehman, and it's what is commonly referred to as either a ladder climbing or a card shedding game, where every round, at the beginning of a round, players have a huge hand of cards numbered 1 to 6, if I recall correctly. And if you're the lead player, you look at your hand and say, I'm going to play 3 2s. And so that's your opening bid. And now I've got to beat that bid, which means I have to have 3 of a number higher. I have to have 3 3s or 3 4s or 3 5s or whatever it might be. Actually, the numbers go up to 9, if I recall, from 1 to 9. And there are fewer higher numbers, many more low numbers. So you can see, they just, played 3, but then, all right, so it's played 3, but then, played another. And what you're trying to do is you want to play your cards as fast as you can so that you can empty your hand, because the first player to empty their hand scores points based on how many cards their opponent was not able to get rid of. So the faster I can get rid of my cards while you've still got cards you're trying to get rid of, the more points I'm going to score. Like there, Michael just had a big run on Stephanie because Michael was able to maneuver things so that he had a lot of combinations he needed to get rid of cards, and Stephanie could not beat any of his combos. But don't worry, Stephanie might make a comeback later on as you watch this run through. Actually, this was an incredibly dramatic run through. I watched all the way from start to finish. There were a lot of highs and lows in that one. But anyway, so there are ladder climbing games have been around forever. They're like trick-taking games and all that. There's a million iterations of it. It's a classic game design format. So what does Chu Han bring to this? Well, designer Tom Lehman has done several cool things. And it was Tom Lehman that made me want to try this out because I respect him so much as a designer. He's just one of the greatest designers of all time. And while I'm not particularly interested in this style of game, I wanted to see it from him for a few reasons. One, it's 2-player only. And these games traditionally are for bigger groups. So a game that works well as a 2-player only ladder climbing game, and I should say right now, it is a phenomenal game. It is a brilliant design. It knocks it out of the park. Fans of the genre might say, oh, this is one of the greatest ladder climbing games of all time, quite frankly, if you're looking for 2-player only. So I thought that was really interesting. And the way it works as a 2-player game is, well, I described the basics of how ladder climbing games work, but here, all your 3s and all your 6s have special powers. The 2s have special powers as well. But more importantly, Michael just led, or Stephanie just led with 3 1s, right? So Michael's got to beat that with 3 2s. Maybe he can. He doesn't have 3 2s or 3 of anything. Before you play, but he did. He played 3 3s there, it looks like. And now Stephanie's got to beat him with 3 4s or something. And what you can do is, on every turn, you can take a writ, which is a penalty token that says, draw 2 more cards. And so what Chu Han does is, it adds push your luck to ladder climbing. Every turn, you can take a writ, which lets you draw more cards so you can build more combos or get more of those cards that you can play for special powers that might turn things around in your favor. But every time you're taking more of those cards, it's a risk. Because if you don't get those cards played, that's going to be more points your opponent gets if they empty their hand first. And the writ itself, the little token, that's also a point they're going to gain if you do it. So if I take a bunch of writs, but then you still beat me, I've given you a bunch of extra points. But the more writs and therefore the more extra cards I draw and push my luck, the bigger a hand I get, the more likely I am to be able to combo and turn things around and push things in a different direction. Plus, on top of that, at the beginning of every one of these rounds, they just started, there's a new event that creates new rules that we have to pay attention to for this round of the game. It's crackerjack. And that's no surprise. Tom Lehman pretty much never fails to deliver the goods. And, I could see why, if you are a fan of this style of game, you're going to love it. Spoiler, Stephanie and Michael loved it. And if you watch their run through, you'll see why. My wife actually liked it quite a bit. I think for her, it would be a keeper. If you watch the Jen Jog she filmed a month, she explains why she really dug it. She kind of played games like this as a child and stuff like that with her family. Me, I don't like it at all. Like I said, I knew I wasn't going to like it going in, but I just wanted to see this fusion of push your luck and ladder climbing, because I had played other ladder climbing games before. I wanted to see a great 2-player only ladder climbing game, which this totally is. And I'm always up for seeing whatever Tom Lehman does, because he's just so freaking brilliant, this man. But at the end of the day, a ladder climbing game, like a trick-taking game, is every single turn me trying to figure out, right, how best can I ruin your plans? How best can I outmaneuver you so that I box you in and trap you and then just make a run on you that destroys you? And you get to do that a lot in this game. And for me, I take no pleasure in that. But if you like card shedding, ladder climbing games, if you're looking for a 2-player game, maybe the best one of all time, quite frankly, or one of the greats, I think this is going to be one of those games that teach you. People are still playing, obsessively, a decade from now. You might want to check out number 16 of the month, Chu Han. Okay, now let's go on to number 15 of the month, Healthy Heart Hospital. Now, this is the 3rd edition of Healthy Heart Hospital, which I covered a prototype form in its first edition, I think over a decade ago. And the fact that it has gotten 3 editions now from different publishers just goes to show how popular and well regarded this game is, because it keeps coming back and people keep loving on it. And here is Danny from channel Danny Chaw doing a solo run through. Although really the solo of this game is basically a 2-player. It's just you have to play two-handed. Playing solo is playing 2-player by yourself. So if you watch Danny's run through, you'll get a sense for what a 2-player game of this feels like also. But what is it? Well, what I really appreciate appreciate, and what I appreciated all those years ago when I covered it originally, is it's a cooperative game about trying to run as best you can a hospital and save as many lives as possible. And to this day, I still don't understand why that's not the default, why there are so many competitive games where we're trying to save lives. This, of course, should be a cooperative game. And then the other thing, this is a cooperative push your luck game, which again is a pretty rare thing. Most push your luck games are competitive, like Quacks of Quedlinburg or what have you, so that you can rejoice when other players bust. Here, if you bust, I'm like, no, because that hurts both of us. Although the interesting thing about this game is it's a cooperative game. Every round, there's a random assortment of cubes that are going to get drawn from the bag that represent new patients that are showing up in our waiting rooms. And then, once a bunch of new ones show up, we take turns. And one of the nice things about this is a cooperative game, you can play in any order. There's no fixed structure where I go, you go, Bob goes. I go, you go, Bob go. I might take 3 or 4 turns in a row because I'm really good at infectious disease. That might be my specialty, and a bunch of infectious disease. So everybody step back. Let me take care of this before you work on your stuff. Or players can play at the same time. But the thing is, every time I take a turn to heal somebody, that means I reach into the bag and I pull out cubes. And I'm hoping to pull out the correct color of cube. But the more time I do this, I'm pushing my luck. The more likely I am to draw black cubes from the bag. And black cubes are good because they're wild, but they're bad. No. I might be thinking of a different game I played this month. Black cubes, right, they're just bad. Because if I draw too many of them, that's gonna bust. That's gonna be bad. And it's kind of communally, we have to be careful about drawing too many of them. But the thing is, you can look in the bag anytime you want. You know what the likelihood is. And while I might want to draw, I might say, oh no, there aren't very many yellows in there now. Maybe I shouldn't do an infectious run curing spree right now. I should let you go first because your power gives you control and avoid the black cube or something like that. And then maybe you could thin out the deck a little bit, doing some administrative actions, let's say, before I go for mine. And that's really where, the game itself is so simple. On your turn, you just pull 5 cubes from the bag and try to attempt, whether it's curing somebody or doing an administrative action. Or you can spend an action just moving a patient from one room to another, from the waiting room to the emergency room, for example. That might give you special benefits for treating them or what have you. So the turns are super simple. The puzzle of this game comes from figuring out what is the best order for players to go. And that's the challenge. And, it's a nonstop probability calculation push your luck game from start to finish. And sorry, that's what Healthy Heart Hospital has always been. You can go watch my original run through I did 1 million years ago. But this 3rd edition is by far, I think, the best iteration of the game because compared to what I played all those years ago, the gameplay is now so much more streamlined, so much more smooth. They like one of the big things is the original game, there were 2 metrics we were kind of track of. How much money we have to invest in upgrades, and also how much prestige we have, because if we lose prestige, we could lose the game. Those 2 elements have been combined into one thing. Now there's just money. If we run out of money, we lose, but we need the money to buy stuff. So it's kind of our score and all of that. So everything's just combined into one thing. And there's a bunch of changes like that. The game is no longer 9 rounds. I believe now it's 6 rounds. So it is faster, it is more streamlined, but the decision space itself is just as interesting and compelling. Because every time you play, you're going to get a different combination of player doctors. You're going to get a different combination of with administrator powers, and you're going to get a different combination of upgrades for your doctors that you can invest in, and additional personnel you can hire, like accountants and coroners and all kinds of stuff. That so every time it's going to be a different puzzle of how best to do things. Because really our choices are, what am I going to do, and am I going to do it before or after you do what you want to do? So the decision space is simple, but taking everything into account, they can be really engaging, fun decisions. And now the game is so fast and elegant. Again, check out Danny's run through so you can get an idea of it. It's the best it's ever been. Now, at the end of the day, it's probably not what Jen and I are looking for in a co-op game, because it's really to the metal. And as a 2-player game, there aren't as many. With a 4-player game, there's 4 special powers for doctors and whatnot. And I think it's going to be more engaging. It's interesting. The original rules of the original Healthy Heart Hospital said, hey, no matter the player count, there are always 4 doctors on staff. And, changes were made so there could be. But I do understand why the original game said there are always 4 doctors on staff, because you want more of those special powers. You want a more complex puzzle to solve. And as a 2-player game, it's less complex because there's only 2 doctor powers. And there's less opportunities for, there's just as many opportunities because, at a higher player count game, each player gets fewer turns. In a 2-player game, there's fewer doctors, but you get more turns per action. But you just don't, it's not as big and complex a puzzle to solve. And Jen and I felt we wanted something a bit more complex. So I think I would enjoy it at a higher player count. Honestly, as much as I mentioned this in the original run-through, how much I appreciated that they came up with alternate variant rules so I could just control one character instead of a variety of characters, I understand why the original rules for this in the first edition went a different way. And I think that might make it better for me and Jen. But still, we like playing single characters. So really, I think Healthy Heart Hospital has always been a very popular and very successful game. Like I said, most games don't get multiple updated editions from different publishers over the years. But Healthy Heart Hospital keeps coming back with a new generation. And I would have to say, by far, the 3rd generation, the 3rd edition, is the best. It's never been as good as this. And if you're looking for, if you like the subject matter and you want a fun, cooperative push-your-luck game, I can heartily recommend Healthy Heart Hospital. But you're going to enjoy it more with more players. Anyway, that is number 15 of the month. Then we go on to number 14 of the month, Djinn. Now, I have not done a run-through for this, but what I've got on screen is a live playthrough done by the channel Boogie Plays. He did a full, it looks like it's a 2-player demonstration of this, so there's a link down in the show notes if you want to see this in action, and get a sense for what the game feels like. But what is it? This is a game where we are genie hunters in some fantastical city. And it's our job. There's genies popping up all over the place. And what we have to do is we have to zip around the city, moving from space to space, collecting the resources we need to literally create bottles and magic corks that we can trap the genies in. Genies, we have to put those genies in a bottle. And we have to get enough genies before time runs out to save the city. And whoever gets the most points at that wins. It is a competitive game where we're racing to be the best at it. Now, the crux of what makes the game interesting is, actually, let me go ahead back and zoom in, go to where they were zoomed in on the board a little bit more. On your turn, let's say, just pause for a second. Let's say I'm the blue player right here. I'm going to have a choice. I came from this direction. I came from this treasure chest. I moved over here to this library. Now, I can't go back the way I came. So on my turn, I must come over here to, I think that's the market, or I must come over here to, what is that? No, this is the tavern where you can recruit, or coming over here is the market. And if I go to the market on the next turn, I can't go back the way I came. So I must go to the catacombs, or I must go over here. So every turn, wherever you move to determines where you're going to be able to move on the following turn. And that's what makes the decision-making so interesting. Because I know, hey, I've got to do this action over here because I've put upgrades on that action. It's the most powerful thing for me. But I can't just walk over and do it. This is not a worker placement game. This is a worker movement game where I have to, turn after turn, I know to get there, I'm going to have to follow this to go here, 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 or maybe here, 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 here. There's like 3 or 4 different paths I could take to get where I need to go. And so I need to plan out what are going to be all the things I do on the way to where I'm going. Whether I am going to the market to buy the bottles, or whether I'm going to the tavern to recruit more assistants who can help me with the mana I need to capture the genies and put them in the bottles. Or whether I'm upgrading so I can make different places more valuable for me to visit. There's all kinds of things, the different areas you can go. But the most interesting thing about the game is, once you've moved, you can't go back the way you came. You've got to keep moving forward like a shark. And that really limits and creates challenging decisions that it's all on you. This is a very strategic game. The other thing that's interesting is every other location you visit, you always, you go back and forth between going to low-level, basic, low-power versions of the market or the tavern or whatever, and then going to powerful taverns and markets and catacombs catacombs and all the rest of it, where you get to do big, super powerful turns. So you vacillate between weak turn and then strong turn. Weak turn, strong turn. The trick about those strong turns is, yes, you'll get to that place. You'll get to open up multiple treasure chests in the catacombs instead of just one, or whatever it might be, depending on where you went. But you are required, every time you go to one of those powerful locations, to capture a genie. And if you don't, you will suffer. You will lose. I think you lose points, or you lose. I forget what you lose. You lose. You basically go up on this track that says you are basically losing more points. Or you move on a track that makes you lose points. So you have to be planning to capture a genie every other turn. But you're also planning every other turn to being a really big, powerful turn. And trying to work all that out is the trick of this game. And it is sharp, and it is fast playing, and it works really well. And it was fairly, this came out a couple of years ago. I totally missed it. I got a copy of it way, way late. I should have been talking about this in 2023. This made it onto some people's top 10s of the year for 2023, but I'm very late to the party. Here I am in 2025 talking about it. So what did I think about it? Well, obviously it came in at number 14 of the list. So I liked it. I would happily play it. But here's the thing. As cool as all those mechanisms are I just talked about, and they come together for a really interesting and unique stew of decision-making processes, I like it a lot. It is at its heart a pick up and deliver game. And pick up and deliver is just not something Jen and I ever dig. If I'm going to play a pickup, if you want to play a pick up and deliver game, and this is the option, this is the one I'm going to choose because it's so much better than most because of all the things I just described. But it is still at its heart a genre of Euro game that's not my favorite, where all my thought is about board traversal, moving from I got to get over to point A to get the thing that I could then take over to point B and do the thing and repeat over and over again. Some people love pick up and deliver, and if you're looking for a pick up and deliver that puts you through much more interesting strategic, not tactical, but strategic decision making. It's all about long-term plans and following those through. This is for you. Now, there's one other thing I forgot to mention. It is unfortunate that one of the coolest things about it pretty much disappears in a two-player game, because when you're going to move, if you're going to move into a place where there are other players already there, you've got to pay them to move into that spot. And so that becomes another consideration. That's where I want to go, but you just moved in and you're in front of me and crap. Now I got to pay you to move in there. Well, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll go the long way around to prevent paying you resources. And the problem is, there's nothing done to tighten up the board. In a two-player game, it's just never going to happen. And I don't know why. It would have been so easy for them to fix this, because it only works that if I move into the same location on the same road as somebody else, I've got to pay them to move in. And in a two-player game, that will never, ever happen. But it'll probably happen a lot at higher player counts as multiple players moving around. So it should have been, hey, you know what? In a two-player game, if I move into the same location as another player, even if they came in from a different road, then I've got to pay them. And then boom, all of a sudden, that extra crunch that goes into it, where what other players do directly affects what you want to do, will come into play. And I think this game would get chef's kiss so much better as a two-player game, and I don't understand why that's not the rule. It would have been so easy to do. But it was not done, and so that is another thing that makes it come in a little bit lower. It definitely would have ranked much, much higher for me as a two-player game with that addition. But anyway, that's why Djinn comes in at number 14 of the game. Definitely, the more players you have, the better for Djinn. All right, now let's go on to number 13 of the month, Quorum, which is the latest game from super hot publisher Devere. Every year, Devere puts out 3 or 4 games, and every year they are some of the most hotly anticipated games of the year, and Quorum is their first game for 2025. And in fact, you can see Kimberly Tolson of Tabletop Tolson, who is a regular contributor here on the channel, she's already filmed a run-through for Quorum, and you're going to see it go up on the channel, I think, in the next couple of days. If not already. It might already be available. Links down in the show notes if you want to check it out. It'll be available soon. Although, again, if you are a backer of the show, you got to see that. I mean, she filmed this run through like 2 weeks ago. So you could have seen it quite a while ago if you support the show. But regardless, what is Quorum? This is a game set in ancient Rome, and it is every turn, there's a collection of, 5 cards on the table. You're going to grab one of those cards, add it to your hand, and then play a card from your hand. Repeat until the game is over. Draw a card, play a card. Draw a card, play a card. So the core rule of this game is super simple. The complexity comes from those cards you're playing because each card does a bunch of stuff. First of all, every type of card, whether it's an architect card or a military card or a market card, each of these cards have unique ways that they score. And at the end of the game, if you really focused on grabbing and playing a lot of market cards, you're going to score a lot of points on them if in their own unique way. Again, military is radically different than Senate cards or whatever it might be. You're probably going to focus on 2, maybe 3 types of cards and really do well in that type because of the way they dovetail. But not only does a market card score you on market ways or Senate ways with a Senate card, but they also let you move up on the progress track of one of the 6 different regions of the Roman Empire. And at the end of the game, not only are you going to score points for every type of card, you're going to score points for every region. And the thing is, you want to make it to the top of each of these because that means you get to score, double, maybe triple as many points on the metrics for those regions as every other player if you can stay ahead of them. And those regions, for the most part, reward you more and more points for. There's a region that will reward you more points if you got a lot of cards with a 3 on them, or if you got a lot of cards that were blue, or whatever it might be. So you are trying to play the right cards to do the set collection for different powers that they unlock, but you're also paying attention to which cards let you move up on the different progress tracks in the different regions. And that becomes a very challenging puzzle to solve because sometimes you'll find a card that does everything you want, but often, okay, well, I'll take this card. It's not the type of card I care about, but it's really going to move me up on the region I want. And on top of that, there's another type of card I didn't mention, God cards, that literally increase or decrease the points, the multiplicative power you get from the different regions. So if you have not been able to work up very well in the Gaul region, which means you're not going to score red cards very well or whatever it might be, but you can see somebody else is going to score huge. If you play the right God card at the right time, you can make that region less valuable. And then now the player who cares about it has got to make that go up again because otherwise all the work they put into it won't score very much. So there's a knife's edge, razor's balance, trying to figure all this out, but all driven by a very simple grab a card, play a card over and over and over again until the game is over, and then you do big scoring at the end. This is a very, very good game. I liked it a lot. So did Jen. Why does it come in at number 13? 2-player. The publisher Devere have made the at this point, I'm going to go so far as to say unforgivable mistake of doing progress tracks wrong. And I see this so often that here's the thing. If you're playing a 2-player game, you want to guaranteed, no matter what, move up at least 1 step on every single region. Because it doesn't matter how well your opponent did on that region, if you're playing a 2-player, and they moved up like 10 spaces, so they can score huge on that region. Oh, well, you know what? I only moved up 1 space, and I score, you get 3 points per red card? Well, I only had to take 1 space and I get 2 points per red card. Don't you feel like an idiot now? And it's just so dumb that they don't introduce a neutral player on each of those regions that says, hey, if I want to get first place or second place, I got to take this neutral player into account. It takes an extra second of time during setup to do that. And I don't understand why they don't do it. It ruined the game for me as a 2-player game because nothing is as important. Everything I just talked about is secondary to, no matter what, make sure you go up at least 1 step on every region. And in a 3 or more player game, you wouldn't think that way because going up 1 on every single region means you will win nothing in any of them. They'll all be worthless to you. But in a 2-player game, that becomes the most powerful, important thing you have to do, and everything else becomes secondary. And it's such a dumb oversight. I don't understand why publishers keep screwing this up, quite frankly. There are so many ways to do it so well. Going back to Belfort, it has been there's been some smart publishers out there that get it right, but the majority of publishers, like Devere in this case, get it wrong, and it drives me nuts every time as a predominantly 2-player gamer. So that is why it hits the bricks. But if they had done it right, this probably would have been in my top 5 games of the month, quite frankly. And if I were going to play it as a 3 or more player game, it would be in my top 5 games of the month. But as it is, because of, as far as I'm concerned, lazy two-player scaling oversight. I see it so often. I used to be a little bit more gentle with my critique here, but it's such an easy problem to fix, and publishers just don't seem to care about their two-player experience that I'm finding myself shouting about it more and more and ranting about it more and more, which is why Quorum comes in at 13. Now, all that said, if you would like a second opinion, like I said, Kimberly has got a video. You'll be able to watch it for yourself. You can get a second opinion and see what she thought of it, and maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe I'm just a crazy old man saying, get off my lawn. But that's how I feel, and that's why Quorum came in at number 13 when it could have been number 5 of the month easily. But a miss for DeVere at number 13, Quorum. All right. Let's go on to number 12 now. And this is Istanbul Choose and Write, which I have not done a run through for, but the channel Biblioteca Roll and Write have done it. And yeah, I'm not really familiar with their channel. It is obviously not an English-speaking channel, but there is a link for it down in the show notes if you'd like to see it, to see the game in motion. And you could turn on the YouTube subtitles and then turn on auto-translate to your chosen language and follow along. But what is it? How does it play? It is a roll and write of Istanbul, which is a long-time Euro favorite. So many people love Istanbul. So many people put Istanbul in their personal top 10s of all time. My wife loves Istanbul, and she loved Istanbul Roll and Write. This was like one of her top 3 games of the month. Spoiler alert for the Gen Jog. But for me, it comes in at number 12. Why? Well, let me explain how it works, first of all. It drops the really cool creating a train of assistants. I mean, it doesn't do that. We're still trying to do the same thing. Travel around a market and get the resources we need and go to the places we need to go with those resources to get gems, racing to be the first to get 10 gems. The theme is exactly the same. A lot of the locations are the same. A lot of the resources are the same. But the way we move around the market is very different. Because on my turn, I've got, what have I got? I've got 2 cards in my hand, but there are additionally 2 cards on the table. So I've got 4 cards to choose from, the ones that are in my hand or the 2 that are on the table. I'm going to pick one of those cards that says, hey, I get to go to the caravanserai, or I get to go to the market, or I get to go to the town fountain, or whatever it is. And I can interact with that space to collect goods, to convert goods, to get special powers, whatever it might be. All the Istanbul Euro type stuff, right? But here's the trick. If I take the card that says, oh, I could go to section 8 here where I make money, I don't have to. I could go to 8 or number 9 to the west, or number B or D to the east, or B and D to the east, or 4 to the north, or number 13 to the south. A card I choose will let me go to one of several different spots. So, that in and of itself is cool. But here's the important thing. I go to that place or one of the adjacent places, I do whatever it is. Everybody else around the table, they get to follow me. It's as if they just played the same card, and they could go to space 8 or space 9 to the east or space 13 to the south. But the trick is, I got to go there for free because I played the card. Everybody else, if they want to follow and do a thing, they've got to spend resources, and there are a fixed number of these resources. And if you're on a turn where, you don't have what you need to be able to follow me and go to one of the adjacent areas of town that I did, well, you're going to have to pass and not get to do a bonus, but you know what you get? You get a wild resource that you can use on a future turn to follow another player wherever you want. And so that's the crux of the game. This is the lead player chooses, and everybody else, a lot of these tile games, going back to Puerto Rico, everybody else gets to do a weaker version of what the lead player chose. Not here. The lead player chooses, everybody else gets to do that if they want, but only if they can pay, while the lead player is free. And if they can't follow, then they get wild resources they can use in the future. That's the crux of the game. And it's good. It's sharp. My wife loved it to pieces because she loved the fact that, I can play the 8, but that actually isn't just the 8. If I play the 8, that gives Jen 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 different locations she can go to if she's got the right resources at the right time. And so she loved that flexibility. And over time, the more people get the gems, the more things get expensive. So it's a race, and it's a very sharp game, and there's special powers you can get and all of that. And it's really nicely done. So for my wife, Jen, she loved it to pieces. For me, it comes in at number 12. Why? I have complained about this before. I think the core bones of this game are great. for a higher player count game. Because such a big portion of the design of this game is about following other players and having the right resources at the right time to be able to follow. And other players deciding, oh, you know what, if I choose this, nobody can follow me right now, so I'm doing it all by myself, and I'm getting the full benefit, and everybody else is just taking a pass, waiting to follow later. So there's all that cool stuff. And I love that. And I love that in games like Machi Koro and Space Base and, My Farm Shop. And, and I love it here too. And as is so often the case with games like this, the game is weaker as a two-player game because you don't get to follow very much. In a two-player game, every other turn I'm the lead. I'm the lead and then I follow. I'm the lead and then I follow. I'm the lead and then I follow. If I were playing a four-player game of this, I'm the lead, and then I've got 3 follows I've got to do before I can be the lead and choose what I want to do again. So that means picking the right time to use the right resources becomes a much bigger portion of the game if I have to follow 3 times every round instead of just 1 time every round. And that makes the game so much more fun and compelling. And they didn't do that here. It's interesting. Space Base, which is probably the most popular of all the some player, in that game, it's not playing a card. Instead, it's rolling dice and then choosing how to use the dice. It's the same basic idea that some player leads and other players follow. And Space Base from AEG and designer John D. Clare is super popular. It's probably the most popular of all of these in terms of sales and, play and all that. And when I played Space Base, I complained about this same thing, that so much of the design is about making tough choices about how to follow, but then as a 2-player game, you only get to follow half as often. So it makes the 2-player game half as interesting. There are half as many tough choices to make. They do the same thing here. Now, the brilliant thing is John D. Clare literally released, after I complained about this with Space Base, the Space Base reprints fixed it and came up with systems where there were basically automatic players, that between the human players there was an automated system where you would get chances to follow, and it's somewhat predictable and all that. And it would have been so easy to do here because every turn I've got 2 private cards that I could choose to play, or I've got those public cards. And the thing is, you got those public cards. You know what? After I go, then have a neutral player say, hey, the rightmost public card gets played automatically. So if nobody other player plays it, you can see it's going to get played, and you could plan for that. And then, so that gets played, and everybody, both players get to follow. Then Djinn plays, and then another neutral player plays. A simple rule like that would have made this in my top 3 games of the month, quite frankly. And I would have loved it as much as Djinn. Now, my wife, Jen, she's not a professional designer. I was a video game designer for 20 years. So when designs make really myopic oversights, especially for 2-player gaming, which is what I care about, I just can't live with it. I just can't roll with it. Every time I play, every turn I take is like, why didn't they do this really obvious thing that would make it so much better for 2-player gaming? They want this game to give you tough choices about following other players, and then they just remove it from the design almost completely, unless you play at a higher player count, and they didn't have to. And that's my problem with Istanbul Choose and Write, and that's why it comes in at number 12 of the month. And it didn't have to. There's such a simple, I just can't believe the designers and publishers, they just don't take that extra little step. And they didn't in this case, and so it's number 12 of the month. Istanbul Choose and Write. But as a higher player count game, ooh, chef's kiss. Is it as good as Istanbul? Honestly, I might like it even more than Istanbul, quite frankly. But as it is for a 2-player game, no bueno, number 12 of the month. Okay. Then, let's move on to number 11 of the month. Mistborn, I did not mute that video. Sorry, let me get a drink of water, since that screwed up. Number 11 of the month is Mistborn, the deck building game. And now, this is from designer John D. Clare, who is one of my favorite designers working to date. And it's based on apparently a very popular series of fantasy books, which I've never read, and I'm not really interested, but either, for a lot of people, oh my God, Mistborn has a deck building game, I must have it. And just that alone, just the title is the reason enough to play it. And honestly, I wouldn't blame you, because it's a very good design. No surprise, designer John D. Clare is very good at what he does. And this is very good, and I don't know how true it is to the books. I totally get it. Here's at its heart, this is a deck building game like Dominion, but it is a head-to-head, dueling wizard game where no matter, I mean, it's a 2-player game or 3-player, 4-player game, everybody's trying to do damage to everybody else, and whoever can do, I forget what it is, 30 points of damage instead of like Magic the Gathering. It's, I gotta do 20 points of damage to you to beat you. Here, you gotta do 30 points of damage to knock everybody out, and, last wizard standing wins. So it's a rock'em sock'em duel. I was not interested in it for that reason because I have no desire, no matter how good the mechanisms are, to try to pummel my wife over the head with a bunch of cardboard, and she doesn't want to do it to me too. But I was interested in this because it comes with a co-op mode, and so I have not played it competitively, but I did play it co-op, and I can say it plays very well. Although, it plays well as a co-op. As I'm playing as a co-op, and basically there is an automated player who has a special deck of cards that, throws minions at us that we've got to deal with, and we got to do so much damage to them before the big bad guy knocks us out. We got to do 70, between us, we have to do 70 combined points of damage instead of 30 damage to just another human player to win the co-op mode. It works. I liked it. But every turn, I could feel, this would be so much better if I were willing to try to beat Djinn over the head, because it's going to be so much more interesting. The decision space, it's good, it's solid, it's well considered, but you should not buy Mistborn, the deck building game, as a co-op game first and foremost. You should buy it as a competitive game that, if you want to, if you're playing with certain players who do not who love the book, but don't want to beat each other over the head with cardboard, you could play it co-op and have a good time, but really, it's at its best when it plays competitively, which I'm not interested in. All that said, I haven't actually explained what the game is. Basically, you're building a deck of cards. You're buying new cards from the market. There are 2 types of cards. Powers and abilities that let you do one-time things, or allies that once you put them in play, they stick around for a while until they take damage, and then they go into the deck, and eventually they'll come back up. But every time you start your turn and you draw 5 cards, the cards you play, you have to pay mana. And in this Mistborn world, it's based on metal. Apparently the magic users of this world, fantasy world, literally ingest zinc and platinum or something like that. They ingest raw metals to absorb the energy so they can do spells and such. And that's what we're doing. At the beginning of the game, everybody has one of each metal. Copper and zinc and tin and steel and bronze and pewter and iron, I guess. So you've got all of those. And so you've got all these cards that are tied to different. Hey, if I want to play this card, I've got to consume some tin. And I haven't consumed my tin yet, so I'll use my tin to play this card. And boom, I get to play the card and do the effect or summon the ally or whatever it is and do the damage or, make the money or whatever. And I spend the money to buy more cards, put in my deck. The thing is, every card has... instead of paying my big metal chips, which I can only play 1 or 2, or as the game goes on, I can play 3 or 4 of them over the course of the game. I can discard cards that generate those same metals to play other cards. So this is a race for the galaxy style. A lot of the cards you play are not by using your primary metals, because you only have so many. You're really limited on how you can use them. A lot of times, I'll discard this card so I can play the other card, and they'll both ultimately go in my deck. They'll come back around later. So that's the crux of the game. And we're doing that to, power up, to get allies, to do damage, to make money, to buy more cards. And you really do, the deck building is very important because I'm really focusing on a deck that's heavy with, pewter and copper and steel. Those are my 3 big ones. And I'm trying to get more cards from them because I found those 3 combo well together. And any steel card I had can power any other steel or iron card if I get a few iron cards here or there. And so the deck building is really interesting. Kind of reminiscent of Star Realms, but it doesn't play on rails quite as much as Star Realms does, because there's still, in that game, hey, you're just trying to create the combos of the same color. Here, you've got to work to make those combos happen, and it's really well done. And I liked it, and I enjoyed the co-op mode. But, again, the co-op is good. I suspect the competitive is great, because that's clearly what it was designed to be, first and foremost. Maybe over time, the villains just need a little bit more going on than just, hey, every turn they're going to draw a card and, there's a new minion on me that I've got to fight before I can fight the bad guy or whatever. The bad guy was okay. It just wasn't as compelling an opponent as a human player would be, or as the villains of Aeon's End or Marvel Champions or something would be. To make a co-op game out of this, the villain has to be more robust with more interesting stuff going on. The villains in this game are very simple, easy to play, but just not as interesting as what you see in Aeon's End. End. So at the end of the day, as a co-op, I play Aeon's End over this. As a competitive game, though, I would play this over Magic the Gathering 7 Ways to Sunday because I think it's vastly superior to Magic. The system for Magic is much more interesting. The control you have is much more engaging. I will say there is one thing, no matter what, competitive or co-op, that I hate about this game. I really dislike the fact that at the beginning of every turn, the first thing you're supposed to do is go up 1 level on your own little personal power meter. Every turn you go up 1 level, and then like every 4 or 5 turns, it unlocks rewards or you become more powerful. And Jen and I found it is so easy to forget to do that. Turn after turn to forget, hey, at the start of my turn, I'm just supposed to move a little cube to the right, and every 3 or 4 times I do that, I get a bonus. I don't know why. Here's the problem. You spent all the other players waiting. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my cards, and your turn comes around, you're so excited. Yeah, I want to go playing all these cards that I've been thinking about. And so the last thing you're thinking about at the beginning of your turn is, right, don't forget, move the little cube up 1 space. And Jen and I mean, heck, I don't know how long this video of me and Jen playing, this was an exclusive video for me and Jen of the game, if you're a backer of the show. I don't know how many times we forgot to do that. And we got 3 turns later, wait, how many times have I forgotten to do this now? And so dumb. Because here's the deal. If you moved up that little cube at the end of your turn, it would be so easy to remember. Because psychologically, at the beginning of your turn, all your thought process is on, right, what am I going to do with these cards? I've been so excited. I've been waiting for these cards to go. At the end of your turn, after you've done everything, your psychological thought process is always, right, okay, is there anything I'm forgetting? Oh, right, I'm supposed to move the cube. So moving the cube at the end of your turn, it is very easy to remember. Moving it at the beginning of your turn when you've got other things on your mind is very hard to remember. And both my wife and I struggled with this, and we found it very frustrating. And it's such a, functionally, I don't think it makes any difference at all to say, hey, move that to the end of the turn. And then suddenly, I mean, honestly, I'd probably bump this up to like number 8 or number 7 of the month. Even though I was so-so on the co-op, a thing that really hurts this game is how dumb that decision is. I don't know. To me, it just seems very ill-considered. Dumb is maybe too strong a word. Because again, as I said right up front, I respect the heck out of John D. Clare, and I'm sure he had his reasons for doing it this way. But I do think he made a mistake. And the game would be much better and flow much smoother with less frustration with this one little tweak. So that's another thing that kind of kept Mistborn, the deck building game, at number 11 of the month. Okay, alrighty, folks, we've made it up to the top 10 games of the month. Starting with number 10, Chai Garam, and I forgot to mute that. There we go, muting it. Here are the publisher, Mosaic Games. They've got a little how to play of the game, so I'm just showing that on screen. This is a game where we are running chai shops in India, and this is what's generally referred to, I think, as a recipe fulfillment game, because there are 3 different types of tea you could make: green tea, black tea, and milk tea. And they all have different combinations of tea leaves and water and milk and sugar and various additives. And each of us runs, I need to slow this, each of us runs our own little chai shop. And every round, you're going to do one of 2 things. You're either going to grab 3 ingredients from the market, and those, I've just listed most of them. Get more water, get more milk, get more sugar, get more tea leaves, or get more additives like ginger or cinnamon or whatever it might be. You're either going to grab 3 cards, and that's going to be your turn. Or, once you've got enough cards to do what you want, you are going to blend those cards together to make the type of teas that all the different customers want. And now there's a communal board, 3x3 grid of customers that want green teas, or green teas with additives, or straight green teas, or this particular type of green tea. They all have different things they want. And what you want to do, wherever possible, is brew tea that will meet the needs of multiples of these customers, either in a row or column, because it's much more efficient to serve 2 or 3 customers in a turn rather than just 1. So you're trying to get the right combinations and brew the right teas to be in the right place at the right time when the right row or column of customers is there, so you can really make big. And then when you serve these customers, you collect these cards and you can use them as resources for various and sundry things. And of course, this is how you score points and all of that, by making teas and serving them. And there's a bunch more, but that's the crux of the game. There's also ways that you can say, oh, I don't have the tea I need to serve that customer, but I really want that customer. You can call them to your own private shop so you can serve them whenever you want. If you pass over customers that have been waiting longer, they get angry, and that means you suffer penalties unless you've got ways to get around that. You've got your aunt and uncle who can give you extra bonus turns and do various things. There are, what are they called? Snacks. When you're grabbing 3 cards, if you grab any snacks, you don't know what you're going to get because you're drawing blind, but once you've got them, they give you cool special powers you can do, and it's a sharp game. It is an excellent example of a recipe fulfillment game. There they are, making a very big green tea there that is probably going to serve 2 or 3 people, and it works nicely. So why is it coming at number 10? Why didn't it rank higher? Because the theme is great. My wife loves chai. She's a huge fan. The presentation is great. There's a lot of variety because every time you play, you've got your own personal goals. There's public goals everybody's racing to complete. It's super nicely done. My only real complaint about the game is the customers are in a communal 3x3 grid of 9 customers. And so much of this game is taking turn after turn after turn, trying to get all your stuff into position so you can have a really big super turn of a super sale. And so many times, what will happen is, I'm almost there. Okay, this is it. I'm ready. Next turn, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to serve 3 customers all at once. I'm going to complete an objective. I'm going to call this other customer so I can set them up for a side goal I'm trying to do. It's going to be amazeballs. And then, while you're waiting for your turn to come around, somebody else serves 2 customers in a completely different part of that grid, and then suddenly all the remaining customers slide into new positions, and everything you were saving up for just gets destroyed. And you're like, oh, I gotta start all over again. Ah! And that happens a lot. So that's the thing. This game wants to be, and it feels like a very strategically focused game where you're trying to save up for really big super turns and it'll be amazing. And sometimes you get to do them and they're amazing feeling. But as often as not, if you try to go for that, you will find yourself very, very frustrated because that plan you've had for 3 rounds just went out the window because of one choice one other player made. And I just wish that everybody was serving their own. We all had our own private grid 3x3 in front of us. I'm worrying about these customers. You're worrying about those customers. You cannot, because this is not a game where, you want to do that, right? Okay, I'm going to really mess with you. You never purposely, the game is too complex. There's too many things going on. It's just everybody's doing the best they can in a very tactical way to try to serve where they can, when they can, with what they've got. Just doing the best they can and inadvertently messing with their opponents. Not meaning to, but it's unavoidable. This is going to happen. And you find yourself constantly taking suboptimal turns because it's very hard to get into those optimal positions because the market is constantly in flux. And both Jen and I would have loved this game so much more if we had our own little market. Not a market to draft from. That's fine that that's constantly in flux. But the fact that what we draft is in flux and what we're trying to serve is in flux, that was too much flux for us. And here is a spam call. So we're going to hang up on them and say a Chai Garam 2 where everybody has their own grid that they're serving to. This would have been in my top games of the month, quite frankly, because I love the theme, I love the presentation, I love all the mechanisms. There's a lot of really cool ideas here. There's extra modules like celebrities you can serve and events. A lot of fun stuff. But at its heart, my wife, she likes strategic games. It becomes a very tactical game where you are, and this is a good thing. This is an interesting design choice. You're incentivized to take suboptimal choices. The bird in the hand versus 2 in the bush. This game is all about, forget about the bush. The bush is not going to be there next round. Take the one in the hand now. My wife really disliked that. And for me, it was almost too much as well. That it becomes so frustrating that because this game feels like it wants to be a strategic game, but you just can't play it that way. And so if you're looking for a very tactical, very constantly having to pivot because the world is totally changing every round, and you love the subject matter and you like recipe fulfillment, drafting games, there's a lot to recommend here. But that was our issue with number 10 of the month, Chai Garam. Okay. Now, let's move on to number 9 of the month, Superstore 3000. Oh my gosh, I thought I muted all these things. There we go, muted, okay. Superstore 3000. Now, This is a tile drafting and tile laying game, and I haven't done a run through, but Steph Hodge, of all the games she's done with Michael, link for it down in the show notes. They do a great job. What is it? We are building shopping malls in the year 3000. Shopping malls in space! The art of this game very much has a retro 50s vibe. It's kind of like what people in the 1950s thought shopping would be like in the year 3000. We're going to shopping malls in space. Little did they know that by the year 3000, shopping malls will no longer exist. And the idea of actually leaving your home to get anything you want will have been something that only the ancients did. But that's okay. It's fun to imagine a George Jetson style future where you still go down to the space mall. And this is a game where we're building space malls. And what's interesting about it, on your turn, you're going to do one of two things. You are either going to grab a tile from the Shopatron 3000. It's like this conveyor belt of new shops that are coming in. The ones that come in more recently, they cost more. The ones that have been around for a while, they're free. We've seen that in a lot of games. So on your turn, you're either going to grab these and build. But the interesting thing about building our malls is most tile laying games, it's a top-down view, and you can build in all directions however you want. This game, it's a side view of the mall. All the art is from the side. And so gravity plays a role because these are basically satellites in orbit, and gravity plays. You can only build upwards. You can see like these crazy weird shaping malls that Michael and Stephanie are building here with like the big crazy special rooms like this super aquarium there, or this fun water slide here that you build up and up and up and higher and create different shelves that you keep going up, because you can't just put things to the right or down because they'll just fall off. Everything has to build higher and higher. And that's a lot of fun. And there are very few tile laying games that do this, and this game really leans into that. Because, again, the structure is you're either going to, on your turn, grab a tile and add it, which is what you do most of the time. And you can see they're near the end of this game, so you're kind of getting close. You're seeing some near final completed malls. And when you're placing these tiles, you're trying to get groups of the same color so they'll score more points at the end of the game. But sometimes when you bring tiles in, they bring customers, these cool little acrylic meeple have really nice art on them. Right, here we are earlier in the game. They've only just started building. Let's jump into the middle. So sometimes you'll bring more customers in, and the customers, this customer wants to go to a furniture shop. This one wants to go to a food court. This one wants to go to a clothing shop. This one wants to go to an arcade, whatever. And so you have to place the customers, the entrance tiles, within 3 spaces of the type of shop they want. So what that really means is when you bring an entrance in and that brings new customers, then you've got to get shops close enough to them so that they will go because you want to score those customers. But you also want to put, like you can see, Steph has got 3 red shops and Michael's got 3 green shops. You're trying to get the same colors. And right now at the beginning of the game, they have no choice but to stack them on top of each other, kind of Tetris style. And so that makes it very difficult to get the right groups of colors together and take care of your customers at the same time. But then later on, when you start building all these crazy shelves that go off in different directions and you get more flexibility as the game goes on, you get more control and more opportunities for fun stuff. Like you can see, Steph is starting to build a bunch of yellows up there. Now I should say, your turn is either grabbing a tile and then playing it, or alternatively, if you're out of money, your turn is trashing a tile, one of the bottommost tiles, and turning them into money for later. And the timing of that is, if somebody were to grab this red tile, because there's other red tiles in the column, they would get money for those tiles as well. So the timing of when to get money is very important because you will get broke. And you need money to be able to grab the things that are super important to you when they first come up. So anyway, that's the crux of the game. And there's a bunch of other stuff. Every time you play, there's a different combination of wacky, crazy shaped things that have different requirements for being able to build them and all kinds of stuff. And there's tiebreakers for how, all things being equal, it's basically whoever built the biggest contiguous group of reds gets a point for that, right? So I want to have a bigger contiguous group of red than you, but often we'll be tied for we both have a size 4 red section. Who gets the point for red then? Whoever had the higher one. So this game is all about building higher and higher and higher, and there's a lot to consider. It is a fun, fast-playing little tile laying game, and I liked it quite a bit. My only real complaint about the game is I wish the tiles were bigger so that you could see the art better, because the art is phenomenal on the meeples and on the tiles, but it's so tiny you almost need a magnifying glass to be able to see some of the fun little jokes and whatnot. But that's a minor complaint. Otherwise, this is a very sharp tile layer. Now, if I had one suggestion I would make for an expansion that would really elevate this, because this is a good mid-tier, what would make this a phenomenal one is, not only, if I would care about the different types of tiles, both because I'm trying to do color matching and service the customers I've got, if those different types of tiles would have special powers. Because that's the thing. There are no special powers on the tiles. The only power a tile has is, once it's there, I can build on top of it. And I really just felt like, maybe even not the regular tiles, but just the cool special tiles that come in. Getting an aquarium or a water park or whatever it might be, yeah, it's a source of points, but it should give me some kind of cool new ability that I've got, and I want to build that as fast as I can so I can use that power sooner. And it's just weird that there's not something like that. And because of that, what they've made is basically a very gateway level game. So it's a little on the light side. I love everything about it. I just wish there was a little bit more crunch. Unique player powers or powers that are associated with the tiles you're building would have elevated this to a top tier tile layer. Because the raw mechanisms are great, but as it is, because it's more of a gateway level game than kind of more of a midweight like what Jen and I are looking for, Superstore 3000 comes in at number 9 of the month. Alrighty. Then we go on to number 8 of the month, Tesseract. Oh my gosh, another one. Did I not mute you? All right, sorry folks. Tesseract is number 8, and what did Jen and I think? I'm sorry. This is a cooperative game that imagines a near future of our planet Earth where this mysterious cube appeared in the Antarctic. And it started out and it was 50 stories tall and 50 in every direction. But over time, elements start to disappear and it shrinks down and down and down. And now, after this has been happening for months and nobody understands what's going on, is it just kind of dissolves. It's dissolving in front of us. It's now gotten to the point where the cube is the size it could fit in somebody's hand. And that's where we start. It's down to now, I think at the end of the game, is it a 4x4x4 cube of different colored mini cubes. But every round, those cubes are still disappearing. And what the scientific community of Earth has figured out is when the last cube disappears, the world will end. The world will be terraformed for alien habitation. We'll all be killed. We're like, oh no, we're running out of time. We've got to save the world. We've got to hack this cube and stop it from destroying all life on Earth. And so every round, another cube is disappearing and we're running out of time. But what we have to do is, on our turn, we are taking cubes and trying to put them into this little matrix over here that if we, all the cubes of the different colors, there's 4 colors and they all have numbered 1 through 6. Because when I say cube, I mean dice. There are blue, yellow, purple, and orange dice numbered 1 through 6, and it's a 4x4 cube of those dice. And we need to draft those dice, taking them from the top and working our way down at the right time to get them into this little matrix, the containment matrix, to stop it. But we can't just grab a cube and put it directly onto the matrix. We have to put them in our own little lab. And what we're trying to do is we are trying to create sets of like 3 or more of a kind of the same number, or we're trying to do straights, a 4, 5, 6, or a 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever. And the bigger a straight or the bigger a set we can do, the more powerful it is. Because instead of taking cubes, we can take the cubes that we've been collecting on our board, discard most of them, and put one of them. And again, the bigger a set we've got, the better it is. We can start filling up the containment cube, while as the cube disappears in front of us, it starts triggering more and more big events that will destroy us. Plus, the cubes we don't end up using, they end up going into this reserve that will kill us as well if we don't keep it under control. So we're, kind of pandemic style, juggling a lot of cubes. I was going to say juggling a lot of balls, but we're juggling a lot of cubes here. Trying to put the right cubes in the right place at the right time. And, I could grab that cube, but you need it because it's part of the straight. But you can't get it, but I'll get it right now because then you've got a special power that will let you take a cube from me and you can complete your straight. So there's a lot of cooperation. It's a very, very fun, as cool as the theme is, it's a very abstract, puzzly little game. And yeah, both Jen and I liked it quite a bit. Every time you play, there's going to be a bunch of different powers you can unlock that are one and done things. And, of course, the way the cube itself is randomly generated means, you're going to get different access to different colors and different numbers at certain times. And so there's a lot to balance, a lot to juggle, a little bit of push your luck, ignoring the building crises so you can focus on what you want to do, but then dealing with the crises if you don't stop them ahead of time. And Jen and I liked it quite a bit. Why did it come in at number 8? I can't speak for my wife Jen. She talked about it in a Jen Jog, but for me, it's still a little on the abstract. I mean, I get it. It's really not. The story is there is a little cube that fits in the size of a person's hand that will destroy our world, and we've only got so much time to hack it and prevent it from destroying us. It's actually really clever. It's really cool. I really like it. But it still mostly does feel like an abstract exercise. There's no idea of who I am in the world, moving around. I am just a disembodied force. I'm a scientist moving cubes from one place to another. And I just would have liked to feel I was a little bit more thrust into this world rather than just being a force that acts upon the world. I mean, that's my problem with abstracts. I don't really feel like there's a role I have in the game. I mean, again, it does work. The theme does fit. I'm a research scientist. I am doing experiments. What does that mean? I'm taking cubes and moving them from one place to another. But it's still, as clever as it is, it still feels a little bit too abstract for me. So, I love the presentation. I love the way actually, one of my favorite things is actually making the original 4x4 cube at the beginning. I think that's just a lot of fun because they've got this cool little cube funnel you use to make it. And by the way, I should say, thank you to Tantrum House. A lot of people covered this when it came out last year, but Tantrum House is just about the only channel smart enough to realize they should put their camera a bit lower so you can see the stack of cubes. Everybody else just had a straight camera looking straight down, so all you could see was the top layer, because layers are a hugely important part of this. I love the fact that the cube is on like a little lazy Susan so you could spin it around. The production quality is great. The puzzle is fun. And the more players you've got, the better, because there's more special powers in the mix, so there's more ways to solve problems. And if you like abstract and you would like to take a break, usually abstract games are competitive. This is a cooperative abstract. That's pretty rare, and it's pretty nice. There's a lot to recommend for number 8 of the month, Tesseract. Now, let's move on to number 7 of the month, Stargazers. Now, this was a sponsored preview I did for a game that's going to be crowdfunding in March, so you'll see my run-through coming for it soon when the Kickstarter launches in March sometime. Although you could watch it right now if you were a sponsor of the show at patreon.com/Rahdo. Anyway, though, there will be a link for it down in the show notes like everything, so you can go check this out. What is this? This is a game where we are amateur astronomers looking through our telescope and trying whatever we observe in the nighttime sky, we want to paint it. We want to paint a mural of it. So over the course of the game, you can see both Jen and I were a little ways into the game, and we're drafting tiles and we're drafting tokens and playing them onto a board that by the end of the game, you will have filled in this 4x4 grid, and it looks like a beautiful poster of the nighttime sky. I say beautiful because the art is by Vincent Dutray, so beautiful how Vincent Dutray could turn basically starry nighttime skies and plants into something that is so beautiful and satisfying to build. But anyway, the presentation is great. But what is the gameplay? Well, you can see my title for the video is Evolving Cascadia Style Tile Laying to the Next Level. And that's really what struck me. As I was playing this game, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of Cascadia because on my turn, there is a 3x3 grid of 8 different piles of tile and token, tile and token, tile and token. And on my turn, I'm going to pick one of those. The tile, I'm going to place somewhere on my board. The token, I'm going to place somewhere on my board. And the reason I kept thinking of Cascadia is I always appreciate how Cascadia, hey, the tiles and the tokens that I grab, in that game, it's landscapes and animals. Here, it's nighttime sky and, heavenly bodies. They don't have to be tied together. I could put the tile in one place and the token in another. And, of course, I want to, wherever I can, grab a combo that it's a good tile and a good token, that they both help me pursue the personal goals I'm trying to chase after. Right? In the drafting. And sometimes I got to get a tile I don't care about to get a token I do want, or vice versa. And that's Cascadia stuff. That's what makes Cascadia so great. But what really does, what's new and different about this, there are several things. One, when I grab my combo of stuff, I have to place the tile immediately, but I don't have to place the token immediately. I've got a reserve of 2 spots. I can wait on those tokens and place them later. But I only got a space to hold 2 in kind of my reserve. And sometimes you want to do that because sometimes you'll grab a token that's literally a black hole that has to destroy tokens you've originally gotten, and you want to get those things to score before you destroy them with black holes. Or you don't want to place this tile until you know if you're going this particular star, until you know if you're going to be able to get that other star that's on the table. So because depending on what else I'll get determines where I want to place it. So just having a little bit more control, a little bit more flexibility is really nice. It becomes a more strategic game. You're less subject to the whims of random chance and bad luck. You have more control, and that's appreciated. But here's what's really special about this game. Over the last few years, dual layer tile laying games have become much more common. You go back to the early days, Carcassonne said, hey, I put a tile and I move stuff around, but there are so many games now where, you're putting tiles on top of tiles, right? I guess Carcassonne had the meeples for scoring, but no, it's like, hey, I'm putting this one tile down and I'm putting this other tile, and they both have like different considerations. And I love multi-level tile laying. But usually the way it works is, and this is true for Cascadia as well, that second level must go on top. You have to have put the foundation down before you can put the second level down. That's kind of standard. That's pretty much true for all of these games, including Carcassonne. You can't put the meeple down until you've put the road that they're going to go on down. Not so for Stargazers, because the tiles have holes in them. If you've been watching instead of listening, you can see that when I grab a tile, I put that tile down somewhere on the board, and I could put the token, the round token, where that tile went, or I could put it anywhere, including I could put it in a place where no tile has appeared yet. So to think about it in Cascadia terms, that elk, I know I want this elk over here, but in Cascadia, I can't put that elk there until I get the grasslands that I need, because I need to put a grasslands there, but I can't put the elk there, and I can't do what I want. Here, I can put that elk where, even though there's no tile there, and I can put the tile later because of the clever design that the underlying tiles have a hole in them. So you can put the thing on top down and then put the thing underneath later. And so that opens up so much possibility for deeper, richer, crunchier decisions to make. You still have, the same considerations of, am I going to get the right combination of stuff? Should I take a chance and go for this particular scoring metric because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get another star or another purple planet or whatever it might be. But you can offset those risks with the fact that you have so much more control. You can park things for a while and wait to place them. You can put things, wherever you want. You don't have to expand from existing things. You can put the first tile on one side, the second tile on the other. You can put the upper level tiles wherever you want and wait for the lower level tiles later. So smart, so satisfying. It makes this an incredibly strategic tile layer. There's still tactics. And that's, and those are still fun too, pivoting and, zigging when you need to zag when things don't go work your way. But in this game, you have so much more control than just about any other game of its type. And that's what makes it stand out and is so special. And by the way, folks, I haven't mentioned up till now, we're to the Keepers part of my countdown for the month. And Stargazers, it's a sponsored preview. I've only played a prototype, but for 25th Century Games, they have knocked it out of the park, and I would strongly suggest watching for it when it eventually crowdfunds, because I think a lot of people are going to be, oh my gosh, I never thought I could play a tile layer like this, where I can just do whatever I want. It is such a breath of fresh air. It is absolutely delightful. It's number 7 of the month. Stargazers. Okay, now let's move on to number 6 of the month. We have got Islebound Emerald Edition. And now, I have not filmed a run-through for Islebound Emerald Edition. What I've got on screen right now is a run-through of my prototype of the original Islebound that came out, almost a decade ago. Oh, man, I covered this a long time ago, back when I lived in Malta. And there's some comments from Paulo saying how I keep goofing up. Always turn on the Klingon subtitles, folks, when you watch my run-throughs. Anyway, though, Islebound has a special place in my heart, and it's been in my collection ever since I covered it all those years ago, because it's that rarest of things, a pick up and deliver game that Jen and I enjoy. Jen and I tend not to like pick up and deliver at all. Just really not our cup of tea. But Islebound made my top 10 greatest pick up and deliver games of all time. Back when I did a top 10 of that with Tom Vassell, the Dice Tower. Me, Tom, and Jason Levine, the gaming machine. We did a combined, each of our top 10 pick up and delivers, and this came in on my list. And while most of that list is gone, because still, pick up and deliver is not my favorite thing, this is a game that I kept on my shelf, call after call, year after year. Why? Because it is a fun game where we are privateers sailing around an archipelago from randomly generated tiles and interacting with the places we move to either conquer them by force or through diplomacy so they become our islands, so that we can leverage them for goods gathering and conversion to expand our empire and race to be the first player to build more buildings in our capital and get all kinds of special powers and recruit crew and have adventures and complete quests and all kinds of stuff. And it's just excellent. It's from designer artist Ryan Lockett, and it's one of his greatest designs ever, quite frankly. And so, even though it's pick up and deliver, because the majority of what you're doing is figure out, right, I got to sail from one side of the world to the other and get the fish over there to deliver them over there so I can recruit a sea serpent, so I can conquer that town, so I can get that special power I want. And it's fun, it's fast, and it's pick up and deliver we enjoy. Now, recently, just this year, it's gotten, I don't think it's tied to any kind of anniversary or anything like that, but the Islebound Emerald Edition has come out. Here it is, right here. And this is 90%. It's why I feel it's okay to go on ahead and show my original run through. This is 90% the same game. But the Islebound Emerald Edition has made a few simple changes that radically improve the game. And this was already a game I really, really liked quite a bit. The only important one to talk about is in the title, the Emerald Edition. In the original Islebound, as we were sailing around and collecting fish or collecting timber to build or do various things and having adventures and whatnot, we were also collecting books. You can see the prototype tokens for books over there. The books are gone. They have been replaced with literal emeralds, little green emeralds. And they still, they literally have just been swapped. The powers that you could use books for, because a lot of times books could be converted to things, you can still do that with emeralds now. But the main function of books in the original Islebound, you can see it right there. We're racing to build these buildings as fast as we can. And you need books to build the newer buildings. The two buildings have been around the longest. You can just spend the resources to build them and get the points. But you usually have to spend books to build the buildings you really want to build. Those books are gone. They've been replaced with emeralds. And now, whenever you want to build a building, you always have to pay emeralds to do it. So it makes it a little bit tougher to build, and it kind of flattens out, the relative value. No matter what building you build, wherever you need to build it in terms of wood or whatever, and whatever points you get, but you always have to spend an emerald to build. So you need to get these emeralds to keep building, because that's how you trigger the end of the game, is once somebody has built 8 buildings, if I recall correctly. I'm pretty sure that was true for the original game as well. We were racing to build 8 buildings and then tally up the points for the buildings and various things you've done. So here's the thing. It used to be, you used books, but things get progressively, the books were important for building. And you collected books the same way you collected other stuff. Books have been replaced with emeralds. And here's how you get emeralds. You don't just get them as a resource, like by going to certain islands to generate, although there are islands that generate resources. The main way you get emeralds in this game is by visiting an island that another player has conquered, or you have conquered. Because at the beginning of the game, all the islands are neutral, but you can take them over by force if you attack them with your soldiers and sea serpents, or you can win them over with diplomacy. But either way, once you have done that, you put your marker on that island, and it means you can go to that island for free for the rest of the game. But other players, if they go to that island, they've got to pay you a coin to get in, right? That was true for the original game. But that was it. It was just that, once I want to take over these islands because it means I get in them for free, but you've got to pay me to get into them. That's still true, but there's an extra twist. Whenever in Emerald Edition you visit an island that is owned by somebody, in addition to whatever else that island does, you get an emerald. And emeralds are the backbone of the game. If you aren't visiting islands owned by players, you're not getting emeralds, you are not going to win this game, because emeralds are an absolutely key resource. It's why it's literally called the Emerald Edition. So the impact this has on the game is to much more heavily incentivize you to visit your opponent's islands. Because yeah, in a perfect world, you only want to visit your own islands and get those emeralds. But your own islands are scattered all over the place, and sometimes you need to go, and you would visit other players' islands before, but now you want to do it so much more because it's the best way you can get emeralds. And there's another thing. In the original game, books were pretty much only for building. And that's true here, that emeralds are used for building, but emeralds do more than books ever did. Emeralds let you save your soldiers after a fight. Emeralds, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of stuff they do. I can't remember what all they do. Well, they let you build like always. Oh man, what is the third thing they do that's new? Emeralds. Right. Oh yeah, they let you build. Right. You can convert emeralds into the influence for diplomacy. So, in the original game, you either had to work up your diplomacy track to your influence track to take them over by diplomacy or get more soldiers to fight. But then you would lose all those resources and have to start building up again to claim islands. Here, those emeralds can be converted into influence and converted into soldiers. So getting those emeralds by visiting your opponent's islands can speed up your own agenda and let you go back to fighting and doing influence or diplomacy that much faster. And this one simple little change, which by the way, I think probably owners of the original Islebound, they could probably just do house rules and say, hey, you know what? Everything I just described, how emeralds work, they work for books in the original game, and you could apply these rules to the original game, and it would probably work. But it makes the game just flow so much smoother. This was already a fast, elegant, satisfying, quick-moving game, but it's even better now with these new rules and tweaks, and I love it so much more because of it. My original Islebound is finally gone, and it has been replaced, and it is going to survive my next call. We're moving to Ireland. I got rid of half my collection. Not Islebound Emerald Edition. It's going with us to the Emerald Isle because Islebound continues to be, it is now better than it has ever been before. And so that is awesome. So I'm very, very happy about that. Oh, another thing I'm in closing. If you go back and watch my original Islebound Final Thoughts, I mentioned how my only problem with the prototype I had played was that they didn't do anything to tighten up the board for two players. Because there's this other thing you can do that if you move to a place where another player is, you have to pay diplomacy to be able to do that. And in a two-player game, it just never happened. So I had suggested in my final thoughts, hey, it should be if you move into a zone, not just an individual place, but an entire tile where somebody else is. Apparently, designer Ryan Lockett dug that idea and added it to the official rules. And I can confirm it makes two-player chef's kiss so much better. So that just makes me feel good that, hey, I've still got the chops. Turns out I was a pretty good designer after all. And I made a great game even better. And it's one of the greatest pick up and deliver games in board game history. And it's better than it's ever been. Number 6 of the month, Islebound Emerald Edition. Alrighty. Whew, let's move on to number 5 of the month. Explorers. Now let's mute. Okay. Explorers of Navoria with the expansion Forgotten Lands. And now I covered Explorers of Navoria when it was crowdfunding last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, when we were in Mexico. And so I finally got a final copy of it, and I got the expansion. And I've got to say, folks, Forgotten Lands is one of those must-have expansions, at least for me and Jen. Because you can go back and watch what I thought of original Navoria. Jen, I thought it was great, but I said at the time it was a little bit on the lightweight side. I thought the really smart blend of worker drafting and then double worker placement. You place a worker out to do something, and then later on you remove the worker to do something else. But it's all in time with other players. So I thought the core gameplay was brilliant. One of the best worker placement games in terms of just raw, creative uniqueness, right up there with, Kenner Spiel des Jahres winning, the North Sea game. I can't think of it now. Not Shipwrights of the North Sea. Raiders of the North Sea. I mean, as brilliant as that was, Explorers of Navoria was equally brilliant with the way it does worker placement. But it was a very lightweight game. So anyway, Forgotten Lands adds like 5 new elements. It adds a new type of card, a new type of worker. It adds constantly shifting rewards for the exploration track, so every round they're different. It adds unique player powers, a unique player power and unique starting resources that we draft for at the beginning of the game. It adds end of round bonuses that change from game to game. It adds so much that it takes it from Gateway to Gateway Plus, to just the perfect, Jen and I like heavier games too. This is not a heavy game. This is not a midweight game. This is not a Gateway. It's between Gateway. It was Gateway before, now it's Gateway Plus, and it's perfect. The kindest thing I can say about it is Jen liked it so much that with this expansion, she said, yeah, let's bring it to Ireland with us. I had to get rid of over 300 games, but we kept this one because the expansion elevates it for us. And I would never play Explorers of Navoria without Forgotten Lands. And also, not for nothing, for people who care, it also gives you extra resources so you can play a 5-player game, and it gives a solo game too. So that's also nice. And I tried the solo game. Here I am playing it as a monthly exclusive video for backers of the show. Links down in the show notes if you want to go check that out. And it was really great too. So, Explorers of Navoria has gotten 10 times better with Forgotten Lands. As far as I'm concerned, a must-have expansion. Okay, and I misspelled Forgotten. I said Forgotten Lands. For Explorers of Navoria, Forgotten Lands. Sorry if everybody has been driven by that typo on the screen the whole time I was talking. Okay, anyway though, let's move on to number 4. Now, Falling. Now, this is a game that I did a sponsored preview. It's crowdfunding right now. Although, as I understand it, this game has already shipped in Japan because it's from a Japanese publisher and a Japanese designer who, before this campaign came along, that I did a sponsored run-through of this game, I had never heard of the designer. I had never heard of the publisher. I'd never heard of any of the designs of this game. But I'm telling you right now, folks, Falling, if you told me this was designed by Stefan Feld, I would have believed you. I think the game is that good. It is such an amazing worker placement game on conveyor belts. You can follow the link down in the show notes. Go check out my run through. Both Jen and I were very, very impressed by this. And I am so happy the game can go wider and be played. And so the world can be introduced to this design superstar because he's been designing games for a decade and I never heard of him. So to me, it's just another one of those examples of how important Kickstarter is, that it can take the risk out of games so that we can have a broader, more cool and fun, dynamic world of board games that we can enjoy. Because this designer never would have been seen outside of Japan if it weren't for Kickstarter. Sorry, folks. Every once in a while I get people complaining about how Kickstarter is destroying the board game industry when that's just so patently false. Kickstarter is what is infusing excitement and dynamism and variety into the industry, and it has allowed it to grow more than ever before. And Falling is a great example. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on it because I've already filmed a run through. It's already available. Links down in the show notes. And geez Louise, I have already gone now. How long have I been talking? Over 2 hours. So I'll just say go follow if you want to see more, but it's a chef's kiss game. I love conveyor belts. I love the way it's done. It's number 4 of the month, Falling. All right. Then let's go on to, excuse me. Number 3 of the month is Invincible, the hero building game. And now I have previously done a sponsored run through for Invincible, the deck building game, which is a very different game. They're both based on the very, very popular, well, I want to say comic book series, but really they're based on the animated superhero show on Amazon Prime called Invincible, which is based on a very popular comic book universe, which is all centered around the one titular hero, Invincible, who is basically this comic book universe, the son of Superman, basically. And, he's learning the ropes and becoming a superhero, and he's in the shadow of his father, and there's all kinds of stuff and a whole universe full of adventures for him to have. And I don't want to spoil anything else. Folks, if you've not seen the first episode of Invincible, try to go in without anybody spoiling anything for you. That's all I'll say. But if you are going to play this game, watch the first episode before you play this game, because this game has big spoilers for the show. Anyway, though, hopefully by now everybody's seen the big twist of Invincible. But regardless, what is this game like? It is a cooperative game, and here's the best way I could describe it. This is like cooperative Orleans as a superhero game, and that's cool. That is a super cool combo. I love Orleans. This is a bag builder. You're not putting little chips into the bag. You're putting cubes instead. But every round, you're gonna, actually, basically, you and your Invincible, your Adam Eve, your Robot, and who's the fourth one? Rexplode. Those are the 4 heroes from the story that you can play as. Or no, And also, they duplicate. Duplicate is in there as well. Maybe there were 5 or maybe 6 heroes. I don't remember. A handful of the heroes from the show comic are here. Every time you play, you pick one of them. You get some starting powers. And because we're all young superheroes just kind of learning our way, throughout the game, we are going to be leveling up in between rounds of fighting bad guys, getting more special powers so we can do more stuff. But when the gameplay happens, basically every turn when your turns, you draw 3 cubes from a bag, and you're hoping to draw black cubes because they're awesome. They're super powerful. They're wild colored cubes that will go on any action to get you closer to unleashing your special powers. Because like, hey, for this power here, I need 2 yellows. For this power here, I've got 1 blue. I need another blue to be able to do that power. Over here, I need 2 purples and a yellow, and I've got a purple and I've got a black standing in for one of the purples. So black cubes are really, really great. But if you draw too many of them, you bust. So this is a push your luck cooperative game. You want to keep drawing and getting all these things, but if you get too many black cubes, which are super powerful, if you get too many of them, you get 5 or more, you'll bust and you'll just basically get knocked out, and then all your turns are wasted and you're going to take damage unless one of your teammates can rush over and revive you. And one of the things I love about this, ever since Spirit Island came out, co-op games where the player is not bound by a rigid turn structure, but instead can do turns in any order you want. Because I can say, hey, wait. Before you take your turn, I'm about to bust. And if I bust, all you need is 1 more blue and you can come over and save me. But if you get the blue now, before I bust, you can't use it to save me. You'll have to use it for something else. So let me go first. So much of this game is about players navigating a fluid, free-flowing turn structure. Everybody could just go until everybody stops pushing their luck and passes. But the important thing is you want to collude with other players. Like, hey, if you've got the power, you're invincible, you could actually move villains around. If you could move that over to me because I can't move, then I think I'll start charging up this power now because I'll think I'll be able to do it. But if I can't get to that villain, there's no reason for me to charge up this power. I should focus on something else. And you'll say, okay, well here, let me pull a few from my bag and see if I could bring it to you before you keep going, before you decide what you want to do with that orange cube you just drew. That kind of stuff. And this is the same kind of decision-making, collaborative planning, coming up with a plan and then executing that we did in Spirit Island. But it's done in a really approachable, fast-playing way that kind of feels like building up your bag and pulling chips out of the bag in Orleans. And then getting the right chips, or cubes in this case, and applying them to the right actions that you want to do. And then getting more chips or cubes and putting them into the bag and unlocking more powers. And all the while, the game comes with, I think, 6 different villains, and they all have different schemes they're trying to do and different special powers, and we're trying to keep the city safe. And you can throw in extra stuff like, oh, I'm trying to not lose my job, so I have that. That affects how I play. Or I'm trying to also go on a date because I'm a teenager. So I love it when they bring in the alter egos of superheroes in as well. So this game just nails it. Nails superheroes. And this made several top 10 of the year lists when it came out in 2024. Obviously, I'm way late to the party. Here I am in 2025. It doesn't quite make my top 10 of the year, but here's the deal. It might ultimately, because there's only one thing I feel that I am kind of missing from this game, and that is I would like to see more. 6 heroes, or maybe it was 5 heroes and 6 villains, or 6 and 6. There is so much more out there. I want more. This is, like Dominion is great, right? But eventually, if you don't get an expansion for Dominion, you're going to feel like, oh, there's diminishing returns. As soon as the publisher says, yeah, we're bringing out more expansion content for Invincible, the hero building game, this is probably going to be a game that stays in my collection. Because this is the rarest of thing. A superhero cooperative game that my wife loves as much as I do. She doesn't like superheroes very much. She's less fond of co-op games than me. And she loved this thing to pieces. And I love it to pieces. And my only worry is that if it doesn't get expansion content like any deck or bag builder, it'll start to get a little stale. So for now, I'm saying it's got a good open salvo, and as soon as it gets at least one more expansion, it'll then have the legs to probably be a long-term, lifetime shelf destination game for me. Because I think the gameplay here is awesome. I'm really super duper impressed by this. And I'm just hoping for a little bit of expansion content for number 3 of the month, Invincible, the hero building game. If anybody knows if there's expansion content, please let me know down in the comments. But anyway, let's move on now to number 2. The second best game of the month is River of Gold. And this is another game that made a lot of people's top 10 lists for 2024. And here I am in 2025. I'm a little late to the party, and it just missed my top 10 of the year. It is so good. It's from a new publisher. The production quality is amazing. The River of Gold, which is what it was called historically, this real world history from new developer, publisher, Office Dog. Oh my gosh, it's so fantastic. Now, I should say, I have not done a run through for it. I grabbed the video from Rewind Masters. Rewind Masters had, I think, the best looking video. A lot of people have covered it, but everybody else did a really bad job showing off how good the game looks. Rewind Masters did a better job showing off the game board and just how impressive it is. But this is a fantastic, simple. Interestingly, I would almost classify this as a gateway game. I guess it's a gateway plus game, but it's a lightweight game that has really just so much depth. At its heart, it's a very simple idea. On your turn, you're going to roll your active dice, and this is a multi-use die. If I roll a 3 or a 6 or whatever, that means I can do one of several things. It means I could move that many steps down the river. And wherever I land, I get to activate 4 zones, right? That's really important. Every time I land, I get to activate 4 things. And I'm hoping I activate my stuff. But if I end up moving to a space where your buildings that you've built are, I can activate your buildings and get really good stuff, and you get bonuses for me using your building. I love that kind of positive interaction between players. So that's one use. I roll a 4. Hey, it means I can move 4 steps. And I've got 2 boats, so I could pick one of my 2 boats. So I've really got 8 different, a combination of 8 different spots I could land on, which means moving that boat is super powerful, super satisfying every time I do it. But instead, I could use that 4 I rolled to build a new building in the 4 zone on the board. And I want to build in that 4 zone because it's still cheap to build there, or because I plan on moving my boat over there, or because I've got an objective to build in that zone. So instead of using my boats to move on the River of Gold, I can use that 4 to say, oh, instead of moving 4 steps, I'm going to build in Sector 4 or Sector 2 or whatever. And so I can build those buildings that are going to be used by me or other players. And there's a wide variety of different buildings and different powers they do. Or the third thing they can do is everybody has a handful of customers. We're merchants. We're trying to move on the river, pick up the goods that we want to sell to our clientele that are represented by cards in our hand. And so I might have all the stuff I need to score this client card in my hand, but I can't give the stuff to that client because the client has a big number 4. So I need to roll a 4. So that 4 could let me move 4 steps, build in zone 4, or service client number 4 in my hand. I love multi-use cards. I think I love multi-use dice even more than multi-use cards. And so that is the simple crux of this game that makes it so good, because you need that 4 desperately. And round after round, I keep rolling 2s and 1s and like, oh, what am I going to do? Now, there are ways you can modify the die and get that 4 you need, but that's less efficient. You want to wait and get everything in position so that when you get that 4, you can move. But oh no, I finally get that 4. And so I can service this customer. But if I move 4, I'll land in a space where I get double resources on everything. I've been waiting for this 4, but now is the perfect time to use the 4 elsewhere. Simple mechanisms come together in a really cool and positively interactive, because you are constantly, it's a competitive game, but you're constantly helping out your opponents by getting huge paydays out of their buildings and giving them huge paydays as well. I love everything about this game. The production quality is amazing. And like I said, I see why it made so many top 10s of the year. It just misses mine, but it was a phenomenal game. And it, as far as I'm concerned, cements publisher Office Dog. And I do not remember the designer. It was a relatively new designer. What's the name of the designer? Somebody please say in the show notes. It's driving me nuts. I should have given credit where credit is due. But I'm at over 2 hours now and I'm exhausted. So all I'm saying is, folks, River of Gold lives up to the hype in the best possible way. It's the second best game of the month. But what is the new game of the month for this very, very busy month with so many games? Folks, let me tell you about game of the month, Race to Mars. Now, I had never heard about this, or I knew almost nothing about this game. I had put it on my wish list because I kind of like some of the ideas I'd read about it. He reached out to me and said, hey, we were successful. Do you mind if I send you a copy so you can maybe give it? I'm like, okay, fine. But how good is it going to be? Folks, This almost made my top 10 of the year. This is, I think, like my number 13 highest ranked game of 2024. This game, I just went through an epic process of getting rid of half of my collection. Before I moved to Ireland, I had to get rid of 300 games. A bunch of games in my collection I got rid of. Games that I've had for years and I have loved, I got rid of because Race to Mars is better than all of them combined. This is one of the best race/deck building games I have ever played. In fact, I think I got rid of pretty much every racing game in my collection. I only kept one other one. It's because Race to Mars eclipses all other Euro-style race to cross a finish line Euro games I've ever played. Why? I should probably explain why, right? Because chances are you've never heard of this. This is the ultimate hidden gem of 2024. Nobody knows about this game. Nobody's heard about it from a small brand new publisher, developer, designer, and I think you can order it direct from him if you want. And folks, unfortunately, I have not done a run through for this, but I have done an exclusive video for backers of my show. If you go to Patreon, if you follow the link down in the show notes, you can go to patreon.com. You can subscribe for a month and watch this plus hundreds of other exclusive videos, or you can just buy it one time. But anyway, here is me and Jen playing a full run through. This was Jen's game of the month. It is my game of the month. Jen loves it so much. I mean, here it is right here at the top of my stack of cards, because Jen says, when we fly to Ireland and move, we are taking this in our carry-on luggage because Jen wants to have this to play it more when we arrive. She loves it that much, and I love it too. So I should probably tell you why I love it so much. Why does my phone keep beeping? I do not care about that. Okay. Here's the crux of it. This is a raid. Let me go back to the beginning of this run because this is a full run through with me and Jen playing. So it starts out. First of all, everybody gets a unique player power for their space agency. You draw two and pick one, and all these space, and there's a bunch of them. So every time you play, you're going to get a really cool, unique power that's going to radically change how you play, make you stronger or weaker in certain things and stuff like that. So you start out with one of these agencies, and you start out with a rocket. You know, the nose of your rocket to Mars, which has one power. It lets you draw two cards. This is a deck building race game, and it plays through two halves. For the first half of the game, you are building a rocket, which is to say playing more and more cards. Let me zoom up a little bit ahead, and you can see I've started to put some extra modules. And you can see Jen has not put any modules on her rocket yet. I put 2 modules on mine. These modules give you more powers, like being able to draw more cards, or store cards, or get experience points, or get like permanent cards. Let's see, if we jump further, after both Jen and I have taken off, you can see I ultimately made a size 4 rocket. Jen made a size 6 rocket. So she has more rocket powers than me. But here's the way the game works. At the first half of the game, you draw a number of cards equal to the number of players plus 1. Right? So in a 2-player game, like what I'm doing here, you draw 3 cards. I just did it. And in turn order, each player is going to take 1 card, and they can either take it as a crew, which means they get the power at the top of the card, or they can take it as a rocket module, which means they get the power from the bottom of the card and they tuck it into the rocket. Or they take it as a crew and means they add it to their deck of cards, because you're building a crew deck. This is a deck builder, but you're also building like a rocket that's going to be driven by the crew. The card that isn't taken, right, so Jen just took this, and it looks like she's going to take that as a crew card. It gives her 2 permanent hull resources that she needs, but only when she plays it, because it went into her crew. I'm going to take one of these cards. If I'm thinking about it, I could take these. If I take it as a rocket, it means I get to draw more cards. So my rocket becomes more powerful, but I haven't added to the crew. Now the card nobody took becomes a trajectory card that indicates what we have to move. It creates the racetrack for us. You can see Jen is the blue player. She's on this top racetrack. I'm on this bottom, or they're called trajectory tracks. And you can see I left this card. I didn't take this card because I'm on the bottom track, and I only added 3 more steps to my racetrack, while I added 4 to Jen's. So every card you draft has 3 functions. Do I want to take it as a crew to be a deck builder? Do I want to take it as a rocket? It's like a permanent card I've got at all times. Or do I not want to take it because it then extends the racetrack I've got to run? And if I built a crew that creates lots of fuel, I'm going to want to have lots of fuel steps. And in fact, that's what I did. The first 2 steps on my racetrack are fuel. And then this one I just added are 2 more fuel. So if I can get a ship that gives me a lot of fuel, or a crew that gives me a lot of fuel, I'm going to be able to stream across this racetrack that much faster. And so, for the first half of the game, you're building a deck, you're building a rocket, and you're building a racetrack all simultaneously. And that's freaking brilliant. I love it to pieces. It makes the draft for the first half of the game so great. But I say the first half. It's not quite as simple as that. Because basically, after, 12 rounds of drafting, and if I zoom a little bit further ahead, you'll see we're almost to the end. Okay, that's 12 rounds of drafting. You can see here's the first 6 racetracks. There's the second racetrack. At this point, Djinn has, she's made a big crew. She's made a big ship. Me, in this particular game, as you can see, I only made a size 4 ship. That means I couldn't, even though our trajectory is plotted, I could not take off until I had a crew, a deck of cards, twice as big as my rocket. So I went with a small rocket, only 4 modules, which meant I only needed 8 crew members, which means I could take off after 12 rounds. I could take off immediately. Djinn made herself a bigger rocket. She's more powerful, but her rocket of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 means she can't take off until she's recruited at least 12 crew members. So that is 18 rounds of drafting. So me, I get to take off after 12 rounds. She has to take off after 18. That means I get 6 extra turns of racing before Djinn ever launches. And so you better believe I'm going to take advantage of that and race. But here's the problem. I got out of the gate faster. I'm like the rabbit. I'm like the hare. I took off like crazy. And I'm going to go fast. Djinn, she's the tortoise. It takes her a longer time to get going, but she'll eventually get going. And when she does, she's got a more powerful rocket. She's got a more varied deck to build. And chances are she'll catch up. And because, here's the thing, the smaller a deck you have, hey, the faster you can go through. If you've got a strong engine to draw a lot of cards, you could draw most of your cards every turn. That's amazing. And get all the cool powers you need. But every time you go through your deck, because the second half of the game is the actual race, every time you go through your deck, you have to take an asteroid card that clogs your deck up and slows you down. And so that's the danger of having a fast, efficient deck is you're flying fast, you're taking more damage from space debris, and it's going to slow you down. And somebody who had a bigger deck, they can probably deal with that better. But it took them a lot longer to take off. And because it's a bigger deck, it was harder to create combos of cards inside your deck. And so, like I said, the first half of the game, but it's for one player, it might be the first half of the game. For the other player, it might be the first 2/3 of the game or the first 3/4 of the game. They might wait forever and build a gigantic rocket that can take care of everything and they don't worry about damage at all. But it took them forever. But now they can take off super fast and catch up because they've got such a powerful deck. And so you have the freedom to take off. And so it's asymmetric. One player's racing while the other player's still building, and who will make it to the end? Oh, it is glorious. This game is so good. And I haven't even talked about everything. Every time you play, in addition to everything I just said, there's a combination, because these cards in your deck are multi-use. If you're then playing and, I drew that fuel card, but right now I don't need the fuel card, well, I could store it for later if I've got storage modules, or I could discard it to get experience. And every time you play, there are going to be 3 cards out here that say you can spend 1, 2, 3, or 4 experience to get bonuses like wild card motion or storage or draw extra cards from your deck or all kinds of things. So while you're playing, your cards are multi-use cards too. You either play them for their crew effect or you discard them to get experience to unlock other bonuses. And every time you play, you're going to get a different combination of those experiences as well. Oh my gosh, this game is so good. Just even saying it out loud, why isn't this in my top 10 for 2024? Well, no, because my number 10 is Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux, and that I still like that one more than this. But like I said, folks, this is the best racing board game I have ever played. It allowed me to get rid of so many other ones from my collection. The only one I kept was Cubitos, and this is better than Cubitos. But I wanted to keep Cubitos because I wanted to push your luck game, and this is not a push your luck game at all. This game is freaking brilliant. And like I said, I've got a full run-through on my Patreon page if you want to check it out. And in lieu of that, I don't think anybody else has covered it because nobody knows about this game. But everybody should. If more people had known about it, I guarantee you this would have made top 10 lists for 2024 like crazy. If you like racing games, or if you like the subject matter of, space race type stuff, you owe it to yourself to run to the publisher's page to check it out because it is amazeballs. It is the best game of the month of an amazing month of games. I cannot recommend highly enough my game of the month Race to Mars. And that's it, folks. Oh my goodness, I am exhausted. 2 hours and 22 minutes. Oh no, I had to cut out a little bit because I kind of exploded halfway through. You never saw it, but you might have noticed a quick little edit at one point. But it's time to get back to work. I've pushed it off long enough. And I should say, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching. Especially big thanks to people who support the show and help keep it running. But even if you don't do that, if you could like or subscribe or share, do all that stuff, because every little bit helps, folks. But that was it. Another month done and dusted. This was a big month because I had so many games I wanted to play because I was trying to decide which games got sent off to the Star West library, like I talked about. Almost all the games I talked about today did. Only numbers, like numbers 22 to number 8, I think, did not make the cut. But like I said, the topmost ones were definite keepers, and we've got some amazing bangers. Wow, some real amazing games, and then some real stinkers that I never even talked about, but I talked about in the Gen Jog if you want to know about them, or I talked about in the Ramble. Anyway, though, I got to get back to work, because there's still so much to get ready. And I just want to warn you, this was a big roundup because I was trying to get so many games covered because they had to go to the Star West Convention Library. Next month of March, I'd be surprised if I even play 5 games. But I will be back next month, and I will be filming in Ireland, and I'll give you an update on how the move went, and I'll tell you about whatever games we did get a chance to play. I'm guessing 5 to 10 maybe. We'll see. And hope you enjoy it. But in the meantime, folks, that was the roundup. That's the wrong. I am exhausted. That was the roundup. And on screen are the various buttons you can click to go watch more things. And like I said, there are links down in the show notes to videos for every single game I played, including some of the exclusives if you want to check them out on Patreon. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Oh my goodness, I'm exhausted. Bye-bye.